What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Andor spoiler cast and review. I'm your host, Root. With me, the Lone Ranger, Shabzy. What
What's
is
up?
good? How you
What's
doing?
up? How are you, man? I'm good. I'm
Welcome,
tired.
everybody. Yeah, it's a bit late over here. Spent all day watching and taking notes and,
Taking
getting ready.
copious notes.
Let's see how long today takes. But yeah, welcome. Let's have a little catch up of like what we've been doing. Besides Endor this weekend, Cyberpunk 2077 dropped, and I got halfway through so far. Gotta say, it's amazing. As
Really.
if you like Cyberpunk, the game, or
I never played the game, but I've heard about it a lot,
yeah,
and I've heard that people can like it.
it was pretty broken at first, but overall the world they built is really good, and it's made by Studio Trigger, one of
Okay.
the number one anime studios working right now in Japan. Do
Wow.
amazing action stuff, and yeah, it's really dope. The visuals are amazing, the story is really cool, and the
How
character
is
journeys.
Keanu?
He's not in it. It's not about the
Okay.
main guy. It's like a different story taking place in the same world.
Oh, okay.
And the game times are actually really cool because it's not so on the nose. It's like they use mainly like locations and items and weapons, but they
Mm.
copy them like one to one. Like they don't need to say it, but the second you see it, you're like, oh, I remember that spot. I've been there. That
Mm.
happened there. And slowly, there's some characters showing up now where like it again. It doesn't matter that they're in the other story. They just are in that world, important
Right.
enough that like they show up. But yeah, totally would recommend it to anybody who likes Cyberpunk or played the
Mm.
game and liked the world or is just interested in a really cool anime, because it's very rare that you get a proper Japanese anime produced by a European studio with like, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of American influence in, but I think that's more about like the cyberpunk world specifically. But
Is it
the
a show or an anime, like an
it's
animated?
it's an animated 10 episode show of like 20-minute
Wow.
episodes,
Mm.
and really dope. Like I said, Studio Trigger is like one of the most legit ones out there. They did like I don't know if you saw the Star Wars anime special where they did like little mini stories and they gave it to different studios and they were one of them. And otherwise, like yeah, they're just known to do some of the greatest anime action at the moment. And yeah, looks amazing. I like I said, can only recommend it. I still have 5 more episodes to go. I don't know. I can't binge like I used to, but I feel like it
Back
kind
in your
of
back in your heyday.
no. I feel like at this point, I realize it just destroys the enjoyment of the show. Like 10 episodes, I think is too much. If you and they never give you six. I feel like six you could binge.
Right.
10,
Yeah.
I feel like
6 to 8 you can binge.
yeah. But even eight, I think is almost like for me a stretch. Like
8 you can do like 4 and 4, like take a tiny little break and then
yeah,
in the
that's
course of
perfect.
like 1 or 2 nights.
That's perfect. I
Yeah.
think because like I feel like with a lot of Netflix shows, I always feel like in the middle you can kind of tell that like they had a strong 7 or 8 episodes, but they
Yeah.
had to get to 10, and yeah, like it depends then on how much are you into the world and everything. Well, like
Right.
for the show, it worked, but there's definitely like there was one episode where like most of it was kind of just like you get to hang out with everybody and see the world and everything, and I was like, this is cool, but like the story would overall maybe
If I've
I don't know.
never played the game, would I still like enjoy it?
I think so,
Or if
honestly.
I don't know
It's
anything about it, someone just shows this anime to me, like
it's more
then
about like, do you like the theme of cyberpunk? I feel like we don't get enough of it. Like if you like Ghost in the Shell or Blade Runner,
mm,
yeah, just like the specific cyberpunk, like cyber hackers, and
mm.
they have the what do you call them? They have like android parts on them. It's all about like
Oh, oh
replacing their
yeah, yeah,
body
yeah.
parts with robot parts, and everybody
I forgot the
is
word.
yeah, I forgot it now too. But it's all about that, like really cool future where you're in a town, in a city where like you're either a corpo, which is like this Japanese company that runs everything, or you're like a street rat, and then you're probably a criminal. and
Yeah.
the corpos are also kind of criminals, and it's like these different worlds. And there's actually like a third thing, which is like the people outside the city, but the show hasn't dealt with that yet in the game. Like when you start in the game, you get to choose where you were brought up, and accordingly, you get to see the world differently. Yeah, overall, it's just a really fucking cool world. I think that's why even when the game was broken, I had a really good time with it. And yeah, until the end, where yeah, overall, it's just like really cool world to be in. You know, like I said, would recommend. And yeah, if you haven't played the game, if you're at least interested in that kind of world and theme, I think it's probably one of the coolest that you can see right now. You know, like I said, it's kind of rare, but yeah.
Oh,
So just wanted to catch up on that little thing because I didn't think that would be worth a full review
man.
since not everyone's into it. But
Put that in there, huh? You scammed me.
I think it's good to like when we
And
have
it's
little
funny.
things.
Well, the thing is, like, I'm glad you talked about that because it almost close to felt like you were talking about Andor
I
when you
was
talked about,
just about to say that like
yeah,
it actually thematically kind of fits into this in terms of like
right.
the style,
All,
right?
all the stuff that it's a story within this bigger universe, and you're either a corporal or a street rat or a rebel
Yeah,
in that
and
sense. And you
he
mentioned Blade Runner, which I actually wanted to mention
yeah, totally.
about this as well. So yeah, go on.
But yeah, like that was a quick catch up. So how about we quickly before we get into Andor, just mention our background with Star Wars, and
Mm.
yeah, if we like, for example, I think we both did a little bit of catch up, maybe
Yeah,
on the movies, specifically Rogue One. Let's talk
all
about
right,
what we thought about that.
all right. So you wanna should I start?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
All right, so for me, I was like never like a huge fan of Star Wars in terms of like how everyone just like grew up with Star Wars and this and that. And I was always I never watched the movies before. I watched like one or two here and there. Never really got into it. And then I was always like fascinated by like the cultural impact that Star Wars had and how everyone would talk about it and how we have like these great like directors and writers of today who have been inspired by Star Wars. They always reference Star Wars, and I always wanted to be like a part of that. And when the episode 7 came out, I was like, this is my chance to get into it. And I watched all 6 movies in preparation. That was the first time I watched the 6 movies, and I got into Star Wars after episode 7. And in that moment, I was like fully caught up in the hype, and it was like, but I really did like it. And episode 7 also, when it came out, I was like pretty interested in where the world and universe of Star Wars would go, and that I was finally a part of it. And after that, Rogue One came out. And should I talk about that, or do you want to first get into Star Wars?
Yeah, I guess I can just quickly mention.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
me, growing up in Germany, original trilogy was always played at least once a year on TV. So it was one of those things like everybody got to see it. And as a kid, I really like loved the aesthetic of just the look of Star Wars. So I always had all the toys and everything. But it wasn't really until episode 1 came out. I think I was about like 10 or 11. And I went to watch it with my friend, and I mean, the movie is made for kids. And it was perfect for us because we came out and we were just like, "What the fuck?" Loved it, completely
yeah,
loved it. Um, that made me watch the old ones as a kid more and get more toys. I do have to say, 2 and 3, I was not as much into. I was like, by then teenager, I had other stuff going on, and when I went for them, it went over my head. I was like, I don't know. That was not what I wanted from Star Wars. But then what really got me in the college days, I found the fan edit of Star Wars where they're trying to make it look like the original, like they take the original trilogy and they're trying to make it look how it looked in the cinema, which is impossible to see now. And
mm,
once I got to see that, where like no CGI and like really just like what they did in the 1970s, I just like immediately was like in love with it on a whole nother level where it's just like, okay, I love the aesthetic, but now I really love like the filmmaking and the story and the character and
mm,
everything because I wasn't distracted so much by like the really out of place CGI moments that are in there now. And yeah, after that, I consumed everything. I rewatched the original trilogy after that, had a completely different view on it. And I think I watched everything except the animated stuff multiple
yeah. That's
times. Big fan of episode 7, 8. I think I don't like it so much as a Star Wars movie, but as a sci-fi movie, I think it's pretty good. And 9, I haven't rewatched. I couldn't rewatch that one. That's I just could feel that like that's just the studio not knowing what the hell they're doing, and
Yeah.
it was sad. But yeah, ranking
Mm.
wise, I would say for me, it's I like probably like first original trilogy with 2, 1, 3. Then I will
Yeah.
go 7, 3, and then I would go with probably Rogue One, to be honest. But yeah,
Oh,
so just for this yesterday, I was doing the chronological thing this summer where I watched 1, 2, 3 again, and I was hoping with Endor, I could watch Endor and then get to Rogue One, but I realized I should watch it before, and then I had to do it. So yesterday I watched Solo first,
oh
just
my God.
because I don't know, just in case. Also, I went to Disney Plus and I saw they were like promoting it for, like, just
Uh,
like, you want to watch Star Wars, Rogue One, and Han Solo, and I was like,
yeah.
maybe it'll be referenced. Um, so I rewatched that, and that was a ride. I mean, I'll just say
Yeah.
quickly, I won't take long, but I really, after the first hour, I was about to like message my bro or somebody. I had to tell someone where it's just like, yeah, this is actually not so bad. It's like, was it unnecessary? Yes, but bad movie? No.
Solo
Yeah,
or Rogue One?
Solo. But then
Yeah,
after
I didn't
that,
mind Solo.
but I have to say,
That was the one movie I didn't mind.
after
Oh,
the
okay.
first hour, it
Yeah.
nosedived so hard for me. Where like, it could have, if it had ended at the Kessel Run, I'd be like, okay, it's an okay movie with a messy ending. But then everything after that is like 40 minutes of just like,
Yeah.
why are you wasting my time right now? With a lot of setup for stuff that like, are you even going to ever address this again? And like, yeah, it reminded me why I didn't rewatch this one. Where it's like, it's a shame, because again, it could have been a good movie, but I think you can just tell the studio was a mess with that one.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but had to do it. But then, anyways, so far it's not important. I realized
Mm.
it was way more important to watch that before Boba Fett, which like now watching
Right.
Solo, I got a lot more out of it after watching Boba Fett.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I guess, but I'm not saying why, but like
Oh, right.
it's kind of implied it once you know what Book of Boba Fett is. But
Mm.
yeah, that was kind of cool. Whereas like, I don't know. But it's just like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I was waiting for someone to reference Solo, and then I realized, oh shit, they actually did quite a bit already.
Right.
But yeah, and then I followed that up with Rogue One, which I
Mm.
think you did as well.
Yeah, I just watched. I actually just rewatched Rogue One. I didn't go through all the other stuff, but I have like I've seen like other things, and I've seen all this recently. So most of it was in my. The problem was I mentioned to you how like at this point Rogue One and Solo have sort of merged together in my mind,
Yeah,
and every time I try to think of one or the other, there's like scenes from both movies that keep playing in my mind because like the look of it is very similar in terms of it's very murky, it's very like dull, and
yeah.
you're like in Rogue One it kind of makes sense because that's the look they were going for, but in Solo it didn't make sense because it's supposed to be a much more lighthearted
That was one
adventure
of the
heist.
surprising things I noticed watching them back to back. Was like, damn, they do look really similar. Especially at
I
first,
know.
like Rogue One, like does pivot and gets a lot more beautiful, but like right at the beginning, you're
Yeah,
kind of like,
right.
okay, yeah, it's the same kind of color palette. And yeah, you're right,
Yeah,
because Solo, I don't know, like yeah, Solo could have been a lot more in the vein of like Obi-Wan or something. I think it was something about them doing this, what's it called, a Star Wars story, kind of. Maybe
right.
they were trying to build an aesthetic for that or
Yeah,
something. I don't know. But yeah, I totally get that. I didn't realize it before, but they do look very
yeah.
similar.
That's what I remember the most from both those movies. Like the only thing that stands out to me, like if I just think of the two movies, the only thing that makes me realize is that this is a solo movie is the actor playing Solo. Other than that, any other character I think of, I have to like remind me. I was like, wait, was this in Solo or was this in Rogue One?
Also, doesn't help that the two female leads look very similar.
They look almost identical. And if like I know, like I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but I know one of them is the lead of Game of Thrones. So that's the only way I know. Oh no, that's the one from Game of Thrones, and she was in Solo. Like that's how I remember that. Now, so even though when I picture them, picture the scene around it, and I know that Diego Luna was in Rogue One. That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like
Woody
those are the
Harrelson is the
two.
other one.
But yeah, but that also I get confused. So I was like, wait, Woody Harrelson, was he in Rogue One? Like, or no, that was the other guy. What's his name? Forrest Whitaker. And I was like, but this is black and white. I can still get them confused.
I do have to say the one thing that stuck out to me with Rogue One, especially when I see the credits, was just like the cast was very random.
Yeah,
Like it's a good cast, but like it's not
it was
like
just random.
it's not a ticket selling cast, you know.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, you want to do Rogue One? Okay, I'll do Rogue One. I'll get $10 million. You know, I'll be part of the Star Wars universe. It kind of felt like that.
Yeah, and I think it weirdly worked in its favor. Where like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it kind of got you to like no one stuck out. Like the main thing was like, yeah, we were focusing on Jane Orso, but everybody was kind of like the lead of their own story. And because no one was like an actor
Right.
outshining the other just by name and presence, I think
Mm.
it gave everybody
And
a
Rogue One,
chance.
yeah.
Yeah, it gave everybody was able to like kind of be on that same level, which I think was important for the end. You know,
Okay, so I'll tell you a funny thing I thought about Rogue One before I watched it the first time. I'm just going to mention this real quick and then we'll move on. Okay. So like I said, I didn't know that much about Star Wars. And then once episode 7 came out, I watched like a few reviews here and there. And someone was talking about Captain Phasma and how they gave her like nothing to do in episode 7. And
or
then
eight
I heard
or
someone.
9.
Okay, well, I'm just I'll stay only right after episode 7. Someone talked about how it's like, oh, it would have been nice to see her. Like maybe she was just someone who got. I don't even know if they were talking about Captain Phasma, but they mentioned like it would have been nice to see like how it was like a regular person who got caught up in the whole empire and now is like this, right? So that phrase got stuck in my head. And then once I started seeing that, oh, they're doing this new thing called a Star Wars, because Rogue One was the first off-branch story. So, and I saw the thing, and I thought that people were talking about that. I thought this was going to be a backstory for Captain Phasma,
Okay.
where she was just this girl who got caught up in the Empire and ends up becoming Captain Phasma, and that's why they didn't have anything. They didn't give her much to do in
And then the movie
episode 7.
starts with a
And
girl
then and
on
then
the
and
run.
then throughout the movie, I was like, is she gonna turn into Captain Phasma at some point? Because I don't watch trailers or anything, right? I just go into a movie fresh. I'm like, okay, it's a Star Wars movie. I'm just gonna go watch it. Because if you think about it, that is actually the most objective way you can actually watch a movie,
Yeah, totally.
where I'm just going in fresh and I don't know what to expect, and I'm just gonna let the storyteller tell their story. And if I can follow it along, like a movie should tell you all it should while watching. Like I shouldn't have to gather other information for me to understand the characters and the story. So, but I mean, it also doesn't help that I went in with misconceptions of what the story is supposed to be. Throughout the movie, I was like, wait, what's going on? When is she going to turn to Captain Phasma? And then the movie ended, and Darth Vader
Well,
comes out, and I was like, oh shit, the movie all wrong.
I
But
mean, by the time you see what's his name? Oh God, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. The guy that they recreated with CGI. Um,
Forrest Whitaker, I'm
yeah,
joking.
no, the main guy who's trying to take over the Death Star from the guy who created it, from Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, Paul Bettany.
No, that's
No, that was in Rose Solo. That was in Solo. That was the
no,
bad
the
guys.
old guy. It's really it just slipped my mind, but
Oh, okay. I know. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know you don't know.
but like he was in the first movie in the
Yeah,
episode 4. That could have been a hint, and they do mention the Emperor quite a bit.
yeah.
And I don't know, there were some
I
hits.
couldn't connect. I was very new to Star Wars at that time, and I couldn't connect those dots when I was watching it. And I was just like, but I did watch it again, and I had the same feelings that I did throughout the first movie as well. Is that I did find it quite boring. And I was like, I was going through a phase where I did want things to be darker, so I didn't mind like that it was going to be like a more serious war drama. But it was like the characters,
Well,
a lot of characters didn't gel together, and for me, like I just like didn't care that much by the end of it.
what you watched it again yesterday. What do you think now?
Same. I had the exact same feeling as I did. What was it, like 5 years ago?
Okay.
And actually now I cared less because now we've gone through so much more Star Wars that didn't end that all that well. So now I've come to that point where it's the same MCU point where it's like that one big chunk of it ended, and now I'm almost like I don't care unless it's something that's something going to be like really interesting, like Obi-Wan. Like I haven't watched that, but I'm still interested in that. And Mandalorian was amazing.
Okay.
So I'm more so on that where I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I'm like I kind of wanted to get into our conversation about that as well, where what is Star Wars anymore? And and I guess that leads into all this where one of my biggest questions with with the show Andor and other stuff is like you mentioned with that you were a kid when the first Star Wars you watched the first Star Wars and it was perfect, right? Because that movie is made for kids. And the whole like feeling of Star Wars, it's also like this adventure fantasy, and now it's like just a straight up war drama
No.
where Star Wars, not war drama, sorry, more like a crime thriller.
Well,
And
can
it
I can
and
I
I'm
jump in
yeah,
here?
and it almost just feels like Star Wars becomes like a brand rather
No,
than
but like I think you're basing that specifically on Rogue One and Endor because
Mhm.
those are the end. Rogue One is specifically a Dirty Dozen war movie in the Star
Right.
Wars universe, which why I like it actually because it's something different. It's like
Mhm.
you're doing something in this world and has nothing to do with Luke Skywalker. Well, actually, it kind of
Right.
does in the end connect, but at the same time, you can watch it and just appreciate it for being just a story inside of this world, which kind of like that one still connects quite a bit. But like now with Endor, um, without spoiler free, I'll just say that like I really like that it's just uh, story in this world. You get to just really be with in the world without having to worry about the bigger picture, about like
Right.
what are the repercussions, what is happening with the government right now, what with the Senate, where's the emperor,
Mhm.
where the Jedi doesn't all doesn't matter right now, especially where like it really is just giving you a story in this really cool world, and I think that's what I appreciate it for. But the I think if you're asking what is Star Wars now, I think they're trying to do the thing where there is something for everybody. Like I think looking at the three trilogies specifically, but even with like what George Lucas did, the first two trilogies are so different. Where
Yeah.
it's really just about I don't know. It's about freedom. You can kind
But
of
but
do.
so sorry to cut you off, but like I just wanted to point that out is that the fact that they're so different is not the issue in that. It's the fact that he wanted to do something more serious and more adult in a world like that, which is why a lot of it didn't work. I mean, obviously there was a lot of other shit that didn't work in the prequels, but would you agree or disagree with that?
Uh,
I don't know.
I would say that the first movie was made for children to sell toys and just the,
Right.
it's basically when Star Wars
And a
the
menace.
when episode 4 came out, the very first Star Wars,
Right.
it became so big because every kid went out to see it and it changed their world and their perception of the world of like what is possible. And he wanted to do that
Yeah.
for the new generation now with
Right.
episode 1. And then everybody hated it, and then
Right.
he did a hard curve where and did really serious episode 2, where even though episode 2 is not that serious, episode 1 and 2 are super basic. There's
Yeah.
very basic stories that you can break
Yeah.
down within like a
Episode three is
sentence.
the only one that
Yeah,
actually is not that bad.
that's the one where like he kind of figured it out, like he had
Right.
something to say, where like 2 almost feels like a filler. Half of the more than half the movie is Obi-Wan on a clone facility walking
Yeah.
around being told what clones are. That's literally
And
like an
yeah.
hour of the movie.
And one more thing I wanted to mention is that you mentioned about the fact that when episode four came out, the first one, like how all the kids went and loved it. Another thing about that is that not only the kids, it was like even adults could watch it like as a family thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't made just like that was the biggest difference between that and Phantom Menace, where George
Yeah.
Lucas didn't understand like how much to make it childish and how much to make it adult, and he just sort of stuffed all of it in.
I think.
And he didn't fully understand what worked with A New Hope.
I mean, I think he was just distracted with like he was doing so much new shit with technology
Yeah,
where like
I
he's
think that was
trying
the
to
biggest
push
thing.
things forward that like
Yeah,
the story and everything kind of fell by the wayside. But
yeah.
actually, like I was actually wrong. Like Star Wars is not about freedom. Star Wars at the core of it is
It's about
no,
family.
no, like that would be Fast and Furious. But no, the original trilogy is taking Japanese samurai movies and westerns and putting them into space
Into space
with wizards.
with and knights
Yeah, but like
and West.
the base of it is just classics like old samurai
Yeah,
like cliches taken up. So it's really
almost
just like
copied.
it's like like Mandalorian is taking a straight up western
Yeah,
and doing
yeah,
that, right? Like, and then Rogue One is doing that with a war movie, and I think when they do that, it's the strongest. Where, like, for example, Obi-Wan was good, but like it was episode 3.5. It wasn't like this
yeah,
is a genre that we're going for, and I think that was something that held that one a little bit further back then. Where like it really worked in the Star Wars universe, and it was
yeah.
like amazing for that. But I think what I'm appreciating right now with what I really liked about Rogue One was just like you could really tell that like they're going for that aesthetic. Where like one thing was they're trying to make it look old so it fits into Episode 4, but also the way it's shot and the characters how they act. You have the war base and like whatever is happening, it's straight up. It's just a war movie, like a World War II movie, behind the enemy lines type of situation. And I had the opposite reaction than you, where like now rewatching it, I actually liked it a lot more because I remember it, first time watching it thinking like at the end it was very messy and shit. And I still think the fact that like everybody goes out in an explosion is a bit lame, and like everybody the second they've like completed their purpose, they
Everybody
get
does.
like it is but like I don't know,
What?
it starts with the robot, and I was like, oh, I guess he did all he had to do, he's peace out. And then it just keeps going, and I'm like, yo, now anytime somebody says yeah I did it, I know he's about to die. And like it seemed
And it's
very
like
much like rushed,
when
you know.
it like the when the robot goes, it's like, in a story when there's one character, he makes a sacrifice or she, it's like, oh my God, that's so sad because it's that one character that does it. That's why we felt so bad for the robot in the beginning. But then when everyone starts doing it, the robots thing just feels like it actually feels like a much smaller sacrifice than what. The character of the robot is completely diminished in like within just a couple of scenes.
Also, then everybody dies in an explosion, but Diego Luna falls down, and you're like, he's not dead. He didn't explode.
Uh,
Like, and I think it just really like they couldn't hide the fact that like I get everybody has to die because they don't exist in episode 4, 5,
because they're
6.
never referenced, so that was their biggest
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
That how
like
are we gonna?
so like they had to be taken out. So I get
Yeah.
that, but they couldn't hide it in any
But they
way.
could have done so many other things, dude. They could have
Like
just gone off to. There's a million different planets in the world of Star Wars where they
it,
could have gone and taken refuge or whatever.
at least one of them should have been fuck, I didn't think he would die right now. Like he's about to do it. He's about to
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
save the day, and he gets shot, and you're like, oh fuck, like now what now what they're going to do? Like what's going to
yeah,
happen now? Because the one guy
yeah.
that could do it is dead. But like no, everybody just fulfills their purpose and pieces out. And some of them are like the pilot, right? He's like, I sent the message, and somebody just walks past, and he's like, wait, is somebody in there? Throws a grenade in there, and the pilot is literally, it's like maybe they never shot him like reacting to the grenade, but he's just looking
Yeah.
forward, like, I did it.
It's,
Like
I
I don't
did.
fucking care that there's a grenade hitting me on the forehead right now. I've done my purpose. Like
I've done my part.
he never struck me as the guy who's like, I guess I don't know. They should have also drilled home further that like this is a suicide mission. The whole time they're
Yeah,
like, "You are our only way out. You need to be here."
exactly. They never mentioned them.
Like they keep referring. Like I
It just
guess
comes out of left
see,
field that they're also.
I guess it's
Yeah,
because a rebellion is built on hope, but at the
yeah,
same
but
time, it's I don't know. Like I say, I guess they could have kept that, but it just too formulaic by the end. But anyways, let's not talk about Rogue One for too
yeah.
long.
But also I wanted to just mention quickly that you mentioned about like how you mentioned New Hope, Mandalorian, and Rogue One about how they did this stuff, right? And Western and space and Japanese stuff. The difference is that it's not just the fact that they did that, but they did it well. And they did it with things that work. That's why Mandalorian worked. And for me personally, Rogue One did it. Not just like I appreciated that they tried to take it in another direction, but it didn't work for me because everything else didn't work within it. You know what I mean? And the Star Wars question I pointed out was more so like just for like a more like because I obviously get it, like, oh, they're just trying to do different things. But just like as an interesting discussion to have is like what Star Wars started off as and what people were looking forward to when they thought, oh, the next new Star Wars movies are going to come out, to now what it has become. I think that's a pretty interesting conversation that we can delve into.
Yeah, sure. Let's have it at the end once we
Yeah.
talk about Andor. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, like final thoughts on Rogue One. Like I said, I liked it more than before. I appreciated that I could see it as this Dirty Dozen war flick. And again, it was this time I could actually, like, I felt like I cared about the characters and the Easter eggs hit a lot harder this time. And I still think the end is a bit messy, and it's one of those, like, I feel like we say so much already in the few times we've recorded, but production was fucked up on that movie, and
Right.
I feel like it just, yeah.
The
it's a
action
shame.
scenes were very, very, very well done.
Yeah,
Especially that last whole fight where you see the perspective of like the people looking at the walkers.
Visually, there's some
Yes.
insane shots. Like anytime the
And-
Death Star shoots, or
Yeah.
like the walkers coming out.
I remember that. And obviously Darth Vader scene. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, amazing!
Like visually that was like amazing and so well done.
There's a bunch, like, oh man, I forgot.
And it's funny that we mentioned Godzilla because I think it's the director of Godzilla, right?
I had to look it up. He has not done another movie since.
I think that's it.
It's crazy. That movie broke him. And then I had to look up Ron Howard, and I was like, I haven't heard from Ron Howard since Solo either. And apparently he's been mainly doing documentaries since, but now I think this year he recently released something on Netflix, which was more like traditional, but also not what he usually does.
But he was more so like a fill-in director. For
yes, but it's still interesting that both those directors seem to have like a really tough time
done with all this shit.
Yeah, so it's a shame.
Star Wars is a huge burden.
Good that they stopped after that.
Yeah.
The next thing we're getting is Taika Waititi is getting to do his own thing in the universe.
Yeah. Oh yes, with Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
I heard he was very pissed. Like he was upset that people didn't like Thor, so he's like, "I'm not gonna come back for the next Thor."
He's also jokes a lot. I think it's him with that, and then the Wonder Woman Kathleen. No, what's her name?
Patty Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins is doing a Rogue Squadron movie, which is the X-wing pilots. So she's doing basically like a Top Gun in space. And apparently her father was a pilot or something like that in the army. So she's kind of like close to it, but I haven't heard much from that lately.
But ironically, you mentioned that, which is weird because some of the worst scenes in Wonder Woman 84 were when they're flying in the jet.
True. But I think I always wanted a Rogue Squadron movie. Just like the idea of it is like it writes itself. Top Gun in space. Yeah. And like that was more like when you see like the Red Leader in Rogue One and shit, I'm just like, yeah, this shit is still dope, you know. But yeah, so Andor dropped on September 21st, 2022.
3 half-an-hour episodes.
3-episode premiere, which I think was a good idea. Yes, it did feel long, but I think I don't know how
it had a purpose. Without getting into spoilers, it had a purpose for it to be all 3 at once. I will agree.
It's like they come as a piece where like I feel like each one has its own arc of the story, and it really like you only really know what it's about by episode 3. So I totally get it because I am kind of worried about how the show is going to work, 1 episode week to week, if it stays the way it is right now. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think I love that, again, we're in this world and we don't have to worry about the big things. It's just a nice contained story, boots on the ground. It feels like a spy thriller, through and through,
Mm.
and like every way I can think about it. Like I was thinking back over it and shit, and I was like, yeah, like literally they're setting it up in every character. They're making sure this is what it is, and aesthetically, it's beautifully shot. Like you was saying, like I at the beginning, I think intentionally even it gives you Blade Runner,
I think it's like an
2042
homage
vibes.
to
I
Blade
think
Runner.
in Rogue One, I know there's at the beginning is a ship that like looks straight up like a Blade Runner ship. So I
Yeah.
think there's probably intentional, but totally
I think
worth.
just to look with the rain and the ways going into like this red light district area,
And it's like
and
industrial
and like
area, and
and obviously the hologram.
but yeah, we'll get into the details in a sec.
Right, my
But
bad.
yeah, overall, I really enjoy it. I think it's overall, it's for me personally, it was a bit of a slower start, but the more I watched it, the more I liked it, the more I got into it, and
Yeah.
every time it did pick up, it picked up really well. Where I was like, this
Mm.
is really cool. I think the acting is great, the directing is
Yeah.
great. I do think, yeah, the only issue I had with it, I wish it wasn't as slow, but I think it's very mature and a lot more human than we get in Star Wars, where like it feels real in a weird way, where like
Yeah.
it could be anything actually. Like wouldn't have to be a Star Wars show. It could be a show on HBO or
Yeah.
just anything, and it would still really work. Where like it just feels like good TV, and that looks almost like a movie too. Where like I
Yeah.
got only very few times I got like, this is, it was more not even from the look, it was more about like how the episode is structured. I got a little bit
Mm.
of like, yeah, that's a bit TV-ish, but yeah, overall I was very happy with it. What about you?
Yeah. It's very similar thoughts about. I really liked it, and I really like the look of it. And this goes back to the Rogue One thing, where it's like this is like pretty much a continuation in terms of the type of story that and the kind of place in Star Wars we're at, like, and the tone of it and the atmosphere. So, but this is done way better. And in terms of like the color palette, it doesn't stay the same color palette whether it's night, day, evening, dusk, dawn. It changes, when it's daytime, it's bright, you can see colors, and the people feel, the character interactions are so much better, like it's so much better written, and everything, like all the information is like doled out, like in a natural format, not like people sit down and like do like exposition and then you get to know, oh, this character is this. Is this sort of, they interact with each other, and all, like you said, aesthetically, I loved it because it's so detailed in every aspect of it, visually, and like the way everyone around Diego Luna are. Because that was my biggest thing, where it's like when you try to do something so serious and grounded in a place like Star Wars, the details is what matters. Unless, like, Blade Runner was known for building this amazing world, right, and having it so detailed and lived in, but it was still like just the one and two movies where the world was built, and it was still amazing. But this is like you're building upon so much different kind of weird shit that everything has to be in place. The way they act, the way they work, the way everything looks, and what they use. Like a warehouse looks like a Star Wars warehouse, a factory looks like a Star Wars factory, and it looks like people that work there. And like in Rogue One, everything felt like everything was taken from here and there and tacked on, and then put like a gray color all over it, like a negative, photo negative color, and this one just feels like it's like they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they had like a story and a character in mind, and they knew, okay, this is his story, so we're gonna tell it out like this. This is the plot that he's in, and I really like how it's like the plot just sort of like he's already on a plot, but then the real plot of the show kickstarts with like a small incident that happens. Like that sparks the actual plot line of the where the show is heading and why. So all the character motivations, everything, it's all like clear. And that was some of my favorite parts about this. And the but I will be honest, like the plot, first of all, the pacing and I am starting to feel the show's length. I didn't feel it. I didn't think it was slow in the beginning. I actually liked how the first episode was constructed in terms of how everything, because it's new. I think maybe I didn't feel it, but by second and especially third episode, I was like, this is getting way too slow, and everything I feel like it shouldn't be 3 episodes. Like this should have been 2 episodes, and it would have worked way, way, way better in terms of. And I guess they have to build upon a lot. And like you said, like if they have to go one episode at a time every week, then they have to take it so slow. If they do all that, like right at the beginning where they give you all this in 2 episodes, then the next couple of episodes are going to start feeling slow. So that's my one concern about the future. And but other than that, it's like it's really interesting. The direction, cinematography is really good, and especially in third episodes, a lot of the scenes look great. And yeah, without getting too into it, it's just like that's what it is. It's kind of hooked me, and I am starting to feel a little bit that the plot is feeling a little too cliche. But I hope they do some interesting. But the characters are really well written, so it's kind of keeping me going just to see what happens with them. Even though the plot kind of feels like a framework, but it does feel a little too like a little too tired, like in terms of just like what and we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I can see that. Hopefully, like you said, there's probably some surprises in there. I mean, it is a spy
Yeah,
show. It's like
yeah.
so easy to just like pull one over the audience, but it has some cool surprises.
So
And
far, it's just been a crime thriller. Even
yeah,
like I haven't seen any spy stuff. So far, I would just call it a straight up crime thriller in
yeah,
Star Wars.
we'll get into it. But I think there were some things that they just like that kind of like setting things up where you're like you're supposed to be a bit on your toes, you know, about
Mm,
what's going on. And I just wanted to add to what you said earlier. I totally agree that the sets are awe-inspiring. I think
mm,
um, all the other Star Wars shows used what is called the volume, which is
right.
a LED wall behind them that has the environment
Mm,
like put onto it through Unreal Engine, which is a video game engine, and it moves with the camera. But I think as in certain scenes in those shows, it you can kind of feel it, where like it
right.
doesn't. I don't know. It feels smaller. Where I think
Nothing in this felt like a set.
so they did not use the volume in this at all. It's all practical on set. And I think costumes and like characters,
Mm,
especially aliens and stuff, you can tell that most of them are practical as well. And it
right.
adds so much to these to the world.
Mm,
Like you're saying, I totally agree that like there's also little things that they show to build the world that like add nothing to the story, but they're so short, but like so impactful to just like
mm.
build out the world where I want to know more about it. Where like
Yeah, right, right.
it's new planets that we haven't heard of, and I actually want to know more about them because of how they're being depicted. Yeah, but yeah, so those are our overall thoughts. What would you give it as like a season premiere rating so far, from 0 to 10?
0 to 10, 3 episode rating
Yeah, for the whole premiere.
for the whole premiere. I would give it. I'm thinking between a 7 or 7.5.
All right.
I would go 7.5 actually. Now that I think about it, like the stuff that I like, I really like, and the stuff that I don't like isn't that much of a thing that I don't like it. Like it's just stuff that I wish they could do this, or I wish they could do that. Not so much like it's not a She-Hulk thing where the stuff that I hated, I really hated it. And not to interconnect too many things with our podcast, but yeah, I think I'll go. I think I might 7.5. I think that's a good score.
All right, I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
personally think I'm a bit higher. I'm more closer to an 8.5, I guess.
Damn.
It's really, I would be willing to give it a straight 9 if it was not as slow. We're
I
like,
would give it an 8 if it wasn't this slow.
yeah, like I think episode 1 was a great start. Episode
Yeah,
2, I loved being in the world, but I was already a bit like, okay, a little bit more.
yeah,
There's do something in it that I personally am not a fan of anymore in terms
yeah.
of like the pacing.
Yeah, they hold
But
on to a scene for way too long because it feels artistic.
yeah, that and the way they intercut certain stories, I just personally slows it down for me.
I
But
wanted to mention that
but
because I had mentioned it in She-Hulk.
yeah, but I think episode 3 for me, by the end of it, I totally loved. Like the last
Oh yes, yeah,
20
yeah,
minutes or so of that is like almost
yeah.
Sicario or something. I was like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
so dope on like
yeah,
so many levels where like I can only do nothing but appreciate it.
yeah,
And I think because of that 20 minutes specifically, I'm thinking more 8.5 than 8 because I'm like, if you give me more action on that level, or not even like action, like set pieces on that level, I'm willing to sit through the slower character building stuff because I still think it's very interesting, most of it. Like even the
What?
small character moments, they make me want to know more about characters that show up, even little ones that show up for like a second, not a second, but like
Yeah,
maybe like for a small 1 minute scene, and I'm like,
right.
yo, that guy is like the best character in the whole show, let me see more of this guy now. And so yeah, I think I'll give it an 8.5 for
That
now.
that last bit almost. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I'll just say this: that okay, we'll talk about it later. So I'll mention it
Right. But I guess
because I don't
for
remember.
me personally, if I had to done only 2 episodes, I wouldn't have felt the slow. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I would have felt it was slower because I 2 didn't have the payoff that 3 had. But then at the same time, I'm like, that's
No,
what.
like no, like they should have done the 3 episodes in 2 episodes.
Oh yeah, I think that would have helped for sure. I think that would have made
Yeah.
it feel like I'm sure you could have trimmed it
You
down
would
in
have
certain
you would have
places.
kept like you would have felt like you're ramping
Yeah,
up and once something like what happens at like when episode 3 ends, it's like, all right, I'm geared up for episode 3 now. And then so but the thing is, like, I don't, like you said, I don't know how many episodes it's supposed to be. Like if it's like the Mandalorian where it's like 8 to 10 episodes, I forgot how many that was.
I,
Then you can,
this
then
is
it's okay to do it and take your time, or like each episode is like long, but like it's like a little slower because you have more character moments, but then it keeps ramping up to a climax at episode 7 or 8. They don't have to work up to like
it's 12 episodes, but I would say
including these three,
yeah, so 9 more.
so 9 more. So this whole thing should have been, I think, like if the 3 episodes would have been condensed into two, then the whole show should have been 8 to 10 episodes at best.
Yeah, for me,
I think if you keep that pacing of 3 episodes into two, if you keep that pacing, each episode would, every single moment of that episode would feel like you can't miss even a second, and you would
true,
like you would stay pumped.
true. No, I can see that. I think for me, it's too early. It's like the same
It's
thing
too
that
early to
happened
tell.
with She-Hulk, where it was like now the show has started properly. So I
Yeah,
would have to see next week, but I would say so far in the 3 episodes, I don't think that they wasted their runtime yet. Where like at least they used
yeah,
it
you're right.
to broaden the like really set the stage and build a world and like let us get into it where like
Yeah,
they're kind of using the TV format to be able to spend a little bit more time in it. It was like that thing when Netflix first started, like when Daredevil first came out. There was like
mhm,
long scenes where like it's just people talking and we're like hanging in that conversation like 4 or 5 beats longer than in any movie or TV
right.
show before because they're just like we can and it's
Yeah,
something but like in that one it felt more like because they could in this one it feels more like okay let's use it to play with the toys a little bit more.
right.
But yeah I agree if it stays this
And you can do that with a lot of things. Like it's like I love actually the character moments a lot more, but when it's done properly and
yeah,
when like every piece of dialogue is like important and interesting and the way the scene is built, like that's interesting.
I think
But
what it could have used was the the crux the thing that pushes the story ahead.
the
um
MacGuffin,
yeah it wasn't clear enough in terms of like we knew where it was starting but we
yeah,
didn't know where it was headed where
and
like
and
we could
especially because like
speculate of like
yeah,
but we didn't know if the story was going to deal with what we think it would with
Mm.
And I don't know. I think that was like for the first two episodes, you're kind of like trying to figure out where we're going, and I think that's what made the slower scenes a bit slower because you're like, okay, yeah, now we're spending time here, but we don't know. We're not moving forward in this scene, for example.
Yeah.
We're learning something from before or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but again, I think that's why, like, let's see, like now with episode 3, maybe that will change. But yeah, I think it was
Let's see.
overall a
Let's
good
hope
idea
so.
to do with 3 episode start, at least for
Yeah.
this show. But yeah, so those are our overall thoughts, spoiler free as much as we can.
And just to last thing add on about that is that on the inverse, I'm so glad that they didn't do one episode per week, because waiting for these 3 episodes for 3 weeks
That's what
would have been so painful. Like,
exactly.
it would have infuriated people. So I would have been like, I don't think I would have like watched this.
I almost
Like by the
I almost hope, like, I know they're not doing it, but it would be almost nice if they would give us at least 2 episodes a week. I was
yeah,
saying last
yeah,
time that, like, I generally with like a 1 hour show, HBO Max did it a couple of
yeah.
times where they dropped 2 episodes every week,
Mm.
and I thought that was perfect. Where like one episode gets you like ready into it, and then it's over, and
Well,
you're like, what now? With
all the big HBO and Showtime shows from like back then, like Dexter, all those things, they were 1 hour long. So whenever a new episode used to drop, it was like, oh shit, like a full hour of content is
true,
dropping.
even like a full hour, like an extra 20 minutes a week,
Yeah,
like does go a long way. But honestly, like I really like the 2 episode format a week, where like
yeah,
it gets me like, it's like, okay, today is Star Wars Day for 2 hours, or like with
yeah.
this one it would be an hour 20 minutes. I get to just be in this world where like I don't know how 40 minutes is going to go.
Or if you're gonna do 30 minutes, then like we said, like it can't be that slow
Yeah,
where like out of 30 minutes you're just like, because like we said, like had these episodes come out one at a time, we would have definitely felt it. Like we would have definitely realized, like by like first episode, everyone would have just been hyped just to watch the whole thing, right?
yeah,
But then you watch by the middle of second episode, you would have started feeling like, well, where are we going with this? And the second episode would end, you're like, wait, I gotta wait another whole week. And a third episode would come, you're like, wait, the story is now getting set up.
yeah.
Like I can't, like, I don't, like people would just then end up like, I guess I'll watch it. Like that attitude of like without, before you're hyped, and then you by episode 5 and 6, you're like, I guess I'll watch it because I just have to finish it. But half of the things you would just like tune out of.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see next week how it
There we
goes,
go.
if
Yeah.
it changes at all. But yeah, overall, I think we agree that was a good way to start it, and yeah, we'll see. Now let's get into more detail.
Spoilers.
Exactly, spoiler warning. Here's your final warning.
I want it.
Do you
Dun, dun,
wanna?
dun, 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 dun. You know the scene I'm referencing?
Not sure.
From episode 3, when all those guys are walking in and everyone in that area starts banging on things.
Oh, okay.
That's a warning signal.
True. Gotta be worried when it stops.
We should put that as our spoiler warning thing. Just from the one guy just starts with the clanking, and then it just goes through the whole fucking. I love that one.
That is amazing. That
Felt like one of like those details that is like lived in universe. They already know what to do at these moments.
I mean, should we? Well,
okay, sorry, I'm going way further into the
yeah,
like a spoiler. But let's start with episode 1.
We can do like a section of like what was your favorite scenes and what was your favorite characters, because I definitely have some.
What should we start off with? With just with a tiny little plot synopsis.
Yeah, I was gonna say I offer you 2 options. One is we do a detailed plot recap and we go in at every spot, or we do an overall synopsis of each episode and we discuss each episode as a whole.
I think just give like a 2-3 line synopsis of what happens in the plot, and then we just go through play by play, like as how we like. But we'll keep it to like episode each.
Cool.
We'll try not like how I did. We'll try not jumping forward or referencing something that comes forward until we've talked about the episode that we're talking about, just so that people don't get confused too much.
Okay. Do you want?
Or actually, we'll see how it goes, because now we're in spoilers and hopefully everyone's seen all three.
Yeah. This is for people who have seen all three episodes.
Right.
So do you want to do favorite scenes and characters first, and then we do just like what's the one or two scenes that like you like the most out of this?
Out of all three, or just
Yeah,
episode one?
out of the whole premiere.
Oh, I would say probably the last ending of episode three. The whole thing, like not just that whole action scene, but starting with spoilers, Boba Fett's in it, right? That's Boba Fett, right?
What?
Or is that just Stellan Skarsgård?
That's just Stellan Skarsgård.
Oh my god! This whole time I thought it was Boba Fett, dude. Oh my
Why do you think
god!
that was Boba Fett? It's a
Because
different
that's what
actor.
he looks like in Mandalorian.
No, he's not blonde. He has no
It
hair.
kind of looks like. So I thought maybe this is a little prior to that. Oh my god! So I wrote notes. I was like, wait, why does it have to be Boba Fett? And then you're like, wait, I guess you need to know Boba Fett. I was like, spoilers. Okay.
I was wondering.
Okay. So I'm glad we mentioned how much we know of Star Wars in the beginning, so people know how little I know.
It's all right. You never
And
know, but he's like,
yeah.
but yeah.
All right. Anyways, so I thought maybe it's just first. Okay. Anyways, so that whole scene starting from it doesn't change my opinion on anything. It was just like I wouldn't have even cared if it was Boba Fett. I just asked why is it, but because their scenes are so well done that I actually didn't care anymore. I was just like, oh, I like their character interaction. So that whole scene from him meeting Stellan Skarsgård in the warehouse to the whole action scene, and then the last part of that small little montage of Cassian fleeing and the old lady sort of crying, that got me emotional. And just how all those scenes even look like that looked like that should have, and it almost I will say this one thing, that it almost felt like it was the ending of season one.
Could be, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it was the Mandalorian, that's how the arc would have taken its time over 8 episodes, and the plot would have been so simple, where he meets Stellan Skarsgård by the end, and then he flees, and the old lady's crying, and then the Bix's storyline is set up, where she's now feeling bad for her boyfriend, and the villain, the deputy, the way he's looking into the sunset, and like, you can see on his face, like he has like a personal vendetta and animosity against Cassian.
Is that what you thought? I actually thought they were trying to depict that he is just not ready for the ramification and the cost of war.
So I had both. That's why I like
He
that
had a
scene
look
so
of
much.
shock on his face.
He was,
And the
because
guy's
he looked
yelling at
around.
him and
Yeah.
telling him we gotta go, and he's just like,
But then at the end, he like sort of furrows his brows, where it's
Okay,
like,
okay,
oh,
yeah.
now he's pissed. And what I liked was that, see, before he was just after Cassian as just some guy who did this thing that he's against, right? Now it's like, once Cassian puts a gun on his head, makes him look like a bitch, and you can see from the beginning. First, I was like, why is he acting like that? But then over the course of the thing, you see that it's just some guy you can see he's vulnerable and insecure of himself when he sees actual army people, and he's like trying to give a speech and stuff, and
definitely
like,
the one that had the biggest flip for me as well. Where like when he first showed up, I was
yeah.
like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend time
Yeah,
with this guy.
exactly. I was like,
And then
he's trying to
by
act
that-
like Kurt Russell from Soldier, and it's like, oh, that's why he's trying to act hard, because he isn't.
Yeah, from the
He
speech
had some-
onwards, he got
Go
better
on.
and better. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to add. But
So all that stuff, yeah.
yeah,
Go
for
on.
me,
My
for me,
bad.
I
I
would
went
say,
on.
I would say I agree. The final scenes of episode 3, the shootout in the warehouse with the things falling and everything, amazing. It was
That was amazing.
like, yeah. At first, I was like, man, I mean, do they have to be coming down one by one? But I was like, whatever. It's a great set piece,
Yeah, exactly.
And then also the town.
builds tension. It builds tension.
Yeah.
That was one of the most tense scenes I saw in all three. That was one thing I lacked in all 3 episodes up until all that stuff, where I was like, oh, look, they're building tension finally. Like, first they were just setting up everything. There were no moments of like where I feel really, really tensed,
that was why I was saying like it almost felt like Sicario, where like you know
It felt like a climax.
something's about to happen, and you're just
Yeah,
waiting for the shoe to drop, and then they add the fucking banging on it in the background, and the lady
that was my
saying, "You gotta watch out when it stops." That's
when
when the
it
shit goes
stops, and they're
down,
like, wait, what?
and like everybody's on the edge, and everybody's just fucking freaking out, and it's just like you
Exactly.
feel it.
And even the music, it's
Yeah,
like that's the first time I noticed some music. Where and obviously I noticed music earlier, but this was the first time I was like, the music was like ramping up to that point where it's like where it'll go, it will go quiet for a second, and the
yeah.
shooting will start or something will start. It's like building up to that moment, and I was like, wow, like a finally a tense scene in this thriller.
No,
Uh,
I thought
yeah,
they nailed it. It was amazing. I'd say it's that. The other scene I will leave for when we talk about characters, and I think the opening is
the opening I
just
was just
such
gonna
a
mention was yeah.
great way to get you into the story. Where like it looks great. It starts in a brothel where like apparently sex.
I was like, what's going
It,
on? Like, this
so
feels a little too dark. That's when I wrote down my question. I was like, who is Star Wars for?
yeah,
Because
but
we're
that's what
seeing this
they
guy.
like straight up. They're like, you have kids in the room. This is not for them. They let you know
Yeah, yeah.
immediately. And apparently, sex is now canon in Star Wars, which is like
Mm.
something to think about. I don't know if they ever talked about sex in Star Wars, not that I know of, but
Well, they've talked about Han
I mean, people
and
had children, and
implied. They've implied. Yeah,
but
people have
like
had
no
children.
one has ever gone strictly out and be like, "Yo, let's bang." So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was really cool to see like a brothel in this world, and just like we were saying, the corporate
And they had
world.
the main girl, big. Sorry, just to mention that they had her in one scene with her pants off, and like I was like, are we like?
I don't even remember how to what.
Uh,
I didn't even
of
notice.
course, I would remember that. Of course, I would. Remember that.
No,
But
but
go on, sorry.
yeah, I just the rain, the corporate city, the people in the bubbles at the beginning, and then even when the guy stopped Andor, and they're just straight up like, he's the same guy. He's not as fucking slick and ruthless as he is in Rogue One, but he's still the guy who pulls the trigger. You know, like that's what he does in Rogue One in the first 3 minutes. First 3 minutes here, again, where you're like, nope, he's still that guy. And I think that's something was really interesting with that character, where like he is like a weird and not a weird antagonist, an unusual antagonist, where like he's very flawed,
Anti-hero.
you know.
Anti-hero.
Yeah, not antagonist, sorry, weird protagonist.
Protagonist.
Yeah. But yeah, I think those two would be my favorite scenes in there. That's because of like the things you said. Great
I
introduction.
wanted to mention when you talk about like the thing where when he's about to enter, the bouncers are like, no guns, no comps, no this, no that, right? And then you're like, ah, whatever. And then when he's leaving, there's like random like drunk kids running, and the guy just goes like, no guns, no, and he repeats the exact same thing, the bouncer,
Yeah,
and I love that little detail of like, oh, this is just so normal for them, like where they have to tell everyone no guns, no this, and they're not even like, hey, you better not have any guns on you. It's
yeah.
like no guns, no comms, no credit, no this. It's like they already expect people with guns, and so that already sets up what world we're going to be living in, where
Yeah,
it's
the
like this
details.
dark city, and yeah, these fucking like cops are there who are like and you knew exactly what's going to happen, but like you said, the way and again the fact that he's got a hood on, isn't that like a reference to I think Phantom Menace, where it starts out with Obi-Wan and them a hood walking towards, and you don't know who it is. So I kind of made a note of that.
But yeah, no, I totally great. And then okay, so now before we do
Oh, and
the
it's like a red light district too. When
yeah,
he's walking, I think when he's leaving or when he's walking towards the brothel, you see like aliens in like
yeah, and you don't
red
know
bubble,
what for exactly.
and
Yeah,
they're doing this kind of
yeah.
shit, and it's
So
very almost identical to our red light district Amsterdam we've seen.
totally, totally. I think that's what was there. They're trying to go
Not that
for.
I've ever been. Not that I've ever been.
But that's why all very cyberpunky. Like there's the sort of shit you
Mm.
see in cyberpunk and cyberpunk material. And you want to hear something creepy? I think I heard out of one of those bubbles, someone said "Uba," which is
Ooh,
it's like there's a midwife robot that brings Luke and Leia gives like helps with the birth, and the robot
okay.
says that as she's trying to calm down the babies. So I don't know
Uh,
if in this world like that's like maybe baby play or something. I don't know what the hell that was.
no, no,
You
no.
know,
I don't think
midwife play. Like I'm gonna treat you like a baby. I
LJW, it's so quick for that.
I don't know. Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody has their
No,
fetish, but
not in a Star Wars thing. I think if like it was Blade Runner, then it could be a
I mean,
possibility. But
it's
I
such
don't think
a
they would do it in a
like you. I
Star
don't
Wars
know.
thing.
Maybe I even heard it wrong, but I could have sworn I was like, is that
Maybe that's what you wanted to hear.
maybe? All right. So just before we do the
Right.
breakdown, last thing, any favorite characters so far?
Favorite characters? I don't know, man. Like all the characters seemed good, but I don't know if I have any like stand out. I might like, even though I almost hated him, and I'm not still sure about the actor, but maybe the deputy inspector,
The you mean the main guy who's like
the main villain.
okay, okay, nice. Yeah, he's good.
I had made a note that I hated him in his first scene.
It's
Not
maybe
not him,
I almost
not
think
him,
it's
the character,
yeah.
the actor, the way he speaks. Like not just the fact that he's trying to be like that emotionless soldier that we get, that's what I like about him, but it's like he, even as an actor, he can't pull it off.
That's what I felt, but like that's what I think is almost
And
intentional. What makes it great?
yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
no, that's a good
That
choice.
even not just to us, but even to like his peers or like his staff members, he appears to be someone who's trying really hard. He's a wannabe imperial commander, you know,
Yeah,
and he seems like some dick kid who's like some privileged kid who just got put in a position of power,
yeah, totally.
and he needs like reassurances from like his staff members, like no, sir, that was really good, don't worry about it, man, you got this, man. and
That's what.
and and you see the real hard army guys in contrast to that. So I might like him. He kind of reminds me of Kylo Ren in that terms.
Yeah, but he's done even a bigger turn. But like, I don't remember last time I saw an actor in character where I'm just like, oh god, no, I'm not down for
Yeah,
this. But by
exactly.
the end, that final shot of him where I'm like,
Yeah,
I want to know where the fuck this is going.
yeah,
You
exactly. I
know,
want to
like
see what.
he went from like down here to up there by the end, which is amazing. But yeah, good choice. I give you three.
Oh shit. Okay. Damn.
So first of all, how come Cassian Andor gets the best droids in all of Star Wars? B
But he
two.
had a stuttering droid.
So B2, fuck, what is his name? K2SO.
Right.
Favorite, like, especially now that I've seen so many fucking Star Wars movies recently, best droid.
Hmm.
Like, he just kills it. I don't know. There's something about him that is just like so fucking perfect that I think he's the, especially after Solo, which has the worst droid, like,
Oh
absolute worst.
yeah.
Like, the second she shows
I'm
up, it's like the movie is
I'm
ruined.
getting those two confused.
Yeah, no, it's Alan Tudyk.
K2SO was the straight sarcastic, like
Yeah,
not sarcastic, but like he's so flat that it seems sarcastic, but he's giving out all the factual information.
he's the one where like in his reprogramming, he just has a problem where he just says anything that comes to his mind. There's no
Right.
filter. That's his
And it's
thing.
all factual.
Yeah, amazing. I love them. And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
we
I
have
like that. I like that about him.
B2 emo, which
Is that his
is
name?
yeah, is the little guy where like when he
I,
shows up,
they keep calling him B.
B exactly, and it's like the second he shows up, I'm like, bro, it looks like Wally, like him driving
Oh
through that
yeah,
world and
yeah,
shit. And the second he said when Cassian is like, "Can you lie for me?" and he's like, "Yeah, I have enough of a charge," and then he's
yeah.
like, "But that's two lies." Like, loved it, loved it.
And
And
then,
we
and then
have
he's like, you're gonna need to reprogram me or something.
yeah, the when they were threatening to like pull out the thing from him or something,
Yeah.
I was like, "You leave him alone, god damn it!" But yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
right.
Like not fair. Cassian
And he
has
seems
two of the
shy.
best droids now. What the fuck?
He seems shy.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It's just like this
Yeah.
little lovable little guy, and he's just like, "Don't go, well, come back." You know,
And
he
he's
just
stuttering all the time.
yeah, sad thing. Love it.
Sad little thing.
Number two
Okay.
is Veg. I had to look it up. Like I had to
Who's
like
veg?
put out the subtitles for it, but it's it's the big guy who's just like what
That
what
guy.
I was just
The
told
muscle. The muscle.
yeah I was just told to stand here. What amazing! I was like, give me a whole show
Okay.
about that guy. You know?
I hope he becomes like the science, like Cassian's comedy relief guy. You know?
Bro, it'd be amazing. I love the whole like, yo, just shut up. Like, don't worry about it and shit. Love it. Amazing. Stole the show, and like that's what I meant. Where like, it's such a like small moment, but it adds so much. Where like it makes the world more interesting enough. Where like I want to know
Right.
more. And then the third guy, which really did that for me, where it's like they really didn't have to show any of it, but the fact that they did, it makes it so much more interesting. Where I want to know more about the town, and it's the
The guy
Hammer
with
Bro.
the hogs.
It's the
Oh,
Hammer
who?
Bro. The
Oh, right. I called him. I
amazing,
called him. I called him DJ Alarm Clock.
bro. The fact that they go back to him and they show him again, I was like, thank you, because that was amazing. And
He does the
it's Star
morning and the
Wars.
night bells.
It's Star Wars. A droid could be doing it, but you can tell that guy loves his job. He made a ritual out of it. You cannot take that job from him. He's like, all of it, like, who? And it starts like you hear those bells in the background while it adds to the tension and the tone and
Yeah.
and then that it leads into episode 3 where they start banging the little bells. Like they just show that like
Yeah.
this is like a main thing in their culture
Yeah.
in that town of I have to look it up again. I don't want to mess it up.
Marlowe. I wrote that down as a negative
It's
in
like
the beginning,
Phoenix or
where it had like four
Ferrix.
different titles for one thing, and I was like, "Why are you making read all
But
this?"
yeah, let's get into each
Right.
episode. I just wanted to get that out of the way to like have a little fun discussion and so that we don't get bogged down in it later when we're trying to get to the episode.
That third one you picked is a really good one.
Favorite. Again, I would be
Yeah.
down to for 12
DJ Alarm
episodes.
Clock. DJ Alarm Clock.
For me, it's the Hammer Bro.
Hammer Bro.
But
DJ Hammer Bro. Because he plays it like he's a DJ.
give me DJ Hammer Bro, a Star Wars story. I'll watch 12 episodes.
There you go. I'll watch that.
It's just him
I'll be happy for that.
and his sensei master, and he's teaching him the ways of the hammer and like why he's doing.
And he wants to do like solos and shit, like Whiplash.
Yeah. And he's like, no, we only give him three hits.
You get J.K. Simmons.
Oh, you're not on tempo.
There you go. This is for our after movie discussion of like trying to come up with our own Star Wars story. This is what we want to watch.
I'm down. Whiplash and Star Wars. Give it to
Whiplash
us.
and Star Wars. There we go.
DJ Hammer.
Wait, with DJ Hammer, bro.
Dude, we got a hit. Call Kathleen Kennedy right now.
Call J.K. Simmons first.
But all right, let's do you have something ready to break down what happened in the episode? Take it away.
So I don't have Disney open, so I'm just gonna go with from my memory.
Okay.
Okay.
Episode
And episode 1, right? So we sort of already talked about it as one of the best scenes out of all 3 episodes, and it starts off with.
Let's just do like a rough breakdown of what happens, and then we'll just talk about the episode.
All right.
If you can remember.
So, all right. So yeah. So it's just like you see a hooded guy in like this dark nighttime, and it's like dingy. There's rain falling, and everything looks like it looks almost identical to Blade Runner. And you see this guy and then you see it's Cassian. Andor, and he's like headed down a red light district type area, and then he walks into a brothel, and right before he walks, he's like stopped by the bouncer, and the bouncer's like, no guns, no comms, no this, no that. And you see him walking, and there was a hologram in there, I think, and he talks to the bartender, and this girl comes up, and he's sort of chit-chatting her. And she seems like a lady of the night.
All right, I guess if you're going in that detail, then we can talk about the scenes and stuff. Where
that's what I remember.
But before everything, I want to say that like I think the opening is kind of cool with the planet, and you see the shape going into the rebel symbol above Andor.
Oh yeah.
I think that's kind of cool. Like it better than She-Hulk, for example. But it seems like
Right.
it's getting like every Star Wars show. That's like kind of what they do. It's just like a title card. Which is interesting, but I guess it works. I enjoy this one. And in that brothel scene, that girl's hair stuck out to me. It was like you can land a speeder on there. A whole
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I thought it was very cool to start in the red lights district and then in the brothel and like just letting you know that like this is about to be a bit more adult. Yeah.
And even the way they're talking to each other, it's not like I made a note of that the bar scene. I thought like obviously you get to know it's a brothel, but in the beginning I'm just like maybe it's just like a seedy bar, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's the contrast of the seedy bar in A New Hope to Solo. I was like, this is like an actual seedy bar where
True.
if you tell me that it's Star Wars, I would be surprised. I was like, wait, what? Like this is Star Wars? Like isn't that supposed to be for kids? Like that's for a normal person. That's what I would think. That's how like grungy they made it look like, and the way everyone's talking to each other, not like very lighthearted
Good
and
point. Like, I don't
yeah,
think
yeah,
we've seen bars like this just fleeting by when we're in those, like, specifically in Obi-Wan, we saw a couple of places like this, but we didn't really spend time
right,
in them. And yeah, good point. Really cool to see that type of cyberpunky bar where, like,
right.
yeah, it could be anywhere.
And just the entire tone of not just the place but the characters as well. It's like straight up telling you like this is
Yeah,
this is the tone we're going to have, right? It's not going to be adventure and fantasy mixed in with like dark city stuff. Like
set the stage perfectly.
this is going to be a Blade Runner in Star Wars. Like that's pretty much what almost like exactly it is, right?
Yeah. Oh,
All right.
and one more
Yeah.
thing. It's the first film or TV show to use the BBY to tell us when this is happening. It says at the beginning BBY 5,
Oh yeah.
which
Oh yeah.
is
So
that's Battle Before Yavin, which, like, as Star Wars fans say that, which is like the New Hope. So this is 5 years before A New Hope, and it's cool to see them finally use that as a, like, to let us know when stuff is happening. Like, usually
right,
we kind
because
of just
normally they
figure it
just
out.
mention the place that
Yeah,
they're at,
we just
like the
kind of have to
planet's name
figure
or something.
it out from, like, the setting and what is going
Right.
on, and you have to kind of pinpoint it that way.
Mandalorian was very
Yeah, you
like
just
not
know
like really
you
you
just
just yeah,
know it's between this and that, but you
yeah,
don't know exact. And now after season 2, and so slowly you can fit
right,
it in somewhere. But I think it's the first time they're legit just like, this is when this happened. Like, five
right.
years before episode 4.
As a non-Star Wars fan, I forgot to mention that before all this, they have these words come up, and I wrote them down. Morlana, corporate Morlana, BBY5.
Yeah,
And immediately I said, "Oh no, am I going to have to try and keep a track of all this information?" And I said, "Please don't do this to me," because as a non-Star Wars fan who doesn't understand these things, for me they're just like, I'm like, so what? What's going on? Like, are these all three? Are all three places? The only thing I understood was corporate headquarters, I think, or whatever, right?
I think what they were
So
showing was that it's in the same district as Way is going later. That's why they were
yeah,
saying, like, did he swim over here or what? But,
yes.
like,
So
yeah,
so that was a concern I had the moment I saw all three things. And then as the episodes went along, the only time they ever mentioned anything different, it helped me because they use more Lana and then they'll say this aspect, which is more of like an earth word, right?
yeah.
An English word, which I understand. And then they didn't go to any other place, at least in these three episodes where I was like, oh, okay, we're in this area, and I didn't have to like keep thinking like Rogue One went to like
I
20
was going to
different
say,
planets.
I think it was a little bit of a callback to that, because in the beginning of that movie, the story jumps from planet to planet to
Yeah,
planet.
and it's like every new planet. I was like, I can't remember all these things. Just like,
Right? Like,
please help
that
me
was
understand. I'm
one.
just a normal person.
After the third planet, I just stopped looking at them, and I was just like, I
Yeah,
just get that this is happening in different planets, and they're
yeah,
all
and we have to give it a name.
they're going to meet soon.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
it's just
right.
all parallel happen. But I think maybe that was a little callback in that sense, where they're just
Yeah,
like, we're not gonna fucking jump everywhere, but we're gonna have
exactly.
the card like we had there, and we
Yeah,
use it to bring in the whole Battle Before Yavin thing, which I think cool idea.
yeah. All right. And then he sees these two guys who, well, he's like trying to get information out of this lady of the night, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, the handsome guy." And then you see these two gross men just sitting by the other bar, and they're like, "Hey, we were your first. Why don't you come talk to us?" And you see them like getting annoyed by I'm just gonna call him Andor or Cassie. Well, I guess
Whichever you
that's
like.
okay. I don't have to mention that. I guess
Yeah.
they're both his names.
Yeah.
Because I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to call him Andor. And then I was like, I could call him Cassie from time to time.
Cats.
Cass, that's what they call him. Which is very funny because in sports shows, there is a girl named Cassidy Hubbard, and she's very hot, and everyone calls her Cass. And there's jokes like Cass has that ass. So every time they called him Cass, I was like, oh no, stop, just call him Cassie or something.
Or Cass.
Well, okay,
What was his real name?
it's because it reminds me of Cassidy or something like that. Very, that's more. But yeah. So and then you see them like sort of get into like a thing like where the cops, and then you find out that those two guys are cops, and they're in a brothel, and you know that they're like the bad kind of cops, and they're gross, and they're trying to just start shit with the Cass, and then you find out that Cass is actually, because the more he starts asking the lady questions, the more like you see her go from flirtatious to like, hey, who are you? What are you asking? Like, are you cop? Like, what's going like because he keeps asking about some girl, and she's like, hey, what are you, her boyfriend or husband? Like, what the fuck? Like, you need to tell me. And then he goes like, I'm looking for my sister, and we as audience are like, oh, okay, so this is like serious shit. Like now you know why he's so like tense, and so she's like, well, people come and go here all the time, you know. So and no one gives their real name. So and
I
then she
like
just sort of and she
I like
yeah
the whole what's her name? And she's like, you don't know your sister's name? It's a
oh
nice little
yeah
setup. I thought what was I thought was interesting also was the cops asking him like, is something funny? And they linger on that funny thing, but like I don't think he ever laughed. And I didn't.
no so
I
he,
get there trying to start shit, but the whole time like cause they kept going for like it's not so funny
yeah
now, is it?
yeah
It's like I
yeah
don't think it was funny ever. Like why you keep going on about it?
yeah that's true
But yeah,
that's true actually yeah that's true yeah they just sort of like it was like written in the script like and then the cops try to start shit. It
like
almost seemed like that rather than actual dialogue, and the cops had to like improvise from like older movies
yeah,
where
maybe.
all the scenes again like we'll get into that, but like all the scenes are very clichédly, I know that's not a word, but clichédly set up, because you see this kind of stuff happening everywhere. Like you go into a bar looking for someone, you ask the lady or the waitress, hey, I've seen, and she's like, hey, you know, it's a very Catwoman did
But
that and a lot of things, and then there's the other guys who are like usually cops or some other guy who's trying to start shit with you, and you're trying to keep the protagonist is trying to keep low, but someone always calls him out into the
I think
spotlight.
the fact that it's in the Star Wars universe, I think that's why it works because it just makes it like, oh, okay, it is that type of
Yeah,
movie in this
yeah,
universe.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like those cliches are things that ground it in
But
that
but
genre.
yeah, but my point was like, even though it's all clichédly set up, the way it's done and the character interactions is very naturally flowed out. So you're sort of just interested in like what's going on, and where is this? You're more interested in like, I know where the scene is going, but I don't know what's gonna happen after that. Like what's gonna like come, because we know something's gonna happen with now the fact that cops are set up in a bar and they're trying to start shit with this, and he's trying to look for his sister, and we know where that's sort of going to head, but we don't know why and what's going to happen next. So that was what was interesting for me.
Yeah.
And once the yeah, sorry, you already said something.
No, no, nothing. I just
Okay.
agreed.
All right, cool. And then so they have that interaction, and once the lady of the night is like, hey, no, like people up here, come and go here, like, and no one uses the real name. It's better that you just get out of here, you know. And she just sort of storms off, and he leaves the brothel. And as he's leaving, there's a small little scene where I mentioned earlier that while he's leaving, there's like other drunks coming into the bar, and the bouncer gets up and repeats the exact same stuff in the exact same manner. Where he's like, no guns, no comms, no credit, no this. And you get the idea that, oh, this is a place where stuff like this is so normal that it's become like, it's like, hi, welcome to Walmart, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's become so mundane for the bouncer to just tell whoever, hey man, like you can't bring guns in here, you know? Okay. and you know that's so you sort of get the idea, the tone of the environment that you're in Star Wars.
I'm starting to really like the whole corporal world because I'm more and more we get of it, the more I'm like, we haven't really seen much of this before, which is really cool.
Of the what?
The corporal, like they call them corpos, the corporation, the
Oh,
blue
right.
suits, and I think that town.
The
No,
imperial
but
people,
they are.
but middle management.
Yeah, exactly. They're not the
Yeah,
imperial army. They're like
like
the
what I mean is like what the imperial army is
like
in a Star Wars movie.
we always hear about trading posts and mining
Yeah,
facilities and all that
yeah,
stuff. So just to see like those guys and how they're
right.
operating, I think is really interesting. Also, that town that like that's where they live. Like once you
Yeah,
make it into that corporation, that's where you be. And there's well, I will talk about it later, but there's like other things that they mention where like like the world building is amazing in it. It's great.
yeah. I
And
agree.
only one thought I had was they kind of linger on Diego Luna walking away up the stairs past the people in the bubbles again, and I
Oh,
was
right.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, I get it. I probably was expensive to make that
Exactly.
staircase.
They shot it, and then they were like, "Should we edit it?" And then they were like, "Hey, we need to fill 30 minutes."
I think it was more about like we spent so much time building that one staircase, it would be
Yeah,
kind of shame to use it just for that one
yeah,
shot coming down. So let's use it for the other way up
yeah.
too. So, well,
But I
it's
don't.
fine.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It's fine. I didn't mind
That's
it.
true.
It
Yeah,
was okay.
I actually didn't even notice that. So there you go. For a non-Star Wars fan to not notice it, that's
I
pretty
that's
good,
not even
right?
like a Star Wars thing. I think that's just like a filmmaking thing where it's just like,
Right. Okay.
use that set. You go with that. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. I know that was a lot of work. Use it.
To get all those people and to light it in a manner where only the bubbles are lit and
It was
like
a
it's
cool
bright.
looking
Yeah, yeah.
staircase. I mean, it
It
was
looked like a Star Wars red light district.
yeah. At the same time, like a Blade Runner one too, which is dope.
Yeah.
Like in Cyberpunk is very much like that. There's people behind glass everywhere.
Yeah.
But
All right. So he goes back up and he's walking away, and then you think, oh, maybe he's going somewhere, and then he gets called out by the cops who are following him, and he's like, they're like, hey, stop right there, blah blah blah, and they try to like intimidate him, and he just stops, and you know it, and you see like you're like, oh, is he gonna get into an action scene? What's gonna happen? And he just sort of puts his hands up and he's like, hey, I have like 3,000 credits in my pocket. And the cop's like, hey, that's the exact price for us to not say anything or for us to go away. And he's like, hand it over, boy. And he's like, no, man, I don't want no trouble. Just come and take it. I don't want to move and think you're like, I'm gonna make a sudden movement and you're gonna like, do something. So just come and take it. And the cops are so drunk and stupid that they could easily, they have guns. So they could stand from far away and be like, nope, you throw it away. We have guns. It's okay if you make a move. They're like, no, we'll come right next to you and we'll try to take shit out of your pocket. And immediately
and then
he
first he's in the right pocket and he's like, no, it's
oh
in the
right,
other one.
no,
And
in the other one,
jumps
yeah.
over.
And he immediately hits the gun and he like headbutts the guy in the back, and he gets the gun from him and he's about to shoot him, and then something really dark happens where I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And the fat guy, overweight person, I don't want to fat shame anyone.
The bigger guy.
The bigger guy, the guy with the mustache, uh, um, who's the main guy trying to start shit. He turns over his colleague and he's like, oh my god, he's dead, he's not breathing, and he's like, oh no, he's just acting, and I'm not gonna. Cassian's like, yo, he's acting. He's like, no, dude, he's actually like fucked up,
I
like
had
he's
to
dead.
actually rewind it and watch it again, and I was like, well, wait, what happened? I was like,
Yeah,
I
he
thought that was
headbutted him
it's
really
actually kind of
hard.
cool. Like, in the franchise where the stormtroopers don't hit anybody and
Right.
like everybody like people die or live depending on the story if they need them or
Yeah.
not. It was like very
But
unexpected.
but this is the first time I've actually like, I mean, one of the biggest things in Rogue One, one of the biggest complaints I and a lot of people have was like you have these heroes who just go around murdering everyone, and it's okay for stormtroopers to kill people, but it's not okay for the heroes to just outrightly just shoot people and like and just move along with their life with like no guilt, no regret, nothing like that. And this is the first time where you actually felt, and it's like the most like insignificant person that he hit.
But it's also
But
such a mundane death, you know.
exactly, and it's like, oh my god, like I actually like I felt like a sinking feeling. I was like, dude, I don't like this is pretty dark, and it's
Which
like
is
4 minutes in, like
like in Rogue One, I think one of the still like a standout moment is the fact that Diego Luna shoots a guy, a fellow rebel, right at the beginning, just because he's
yeah,
like, I don't want to take you
oh
with
yeah,
me,
exactly, yeah, exactly.
right? So I like that. Like again, I think Andor is actually a really interesting protagonist in the sense that like we haven't seen them much,
Yeah,
you know.
that's actually a good point that you brought up because once because in the beginning Andor is like trying to deny, right? He's like, no, 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 he's not. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sure he's playing a trick. I'm sure, like he's trying to deny it to himself
yeah.
that he actually did this. And when you see the bigger guy with the mustache, he actually starts begging for like he starts like crying almost, and he's like, and he starts coming up with this whole story like, hey, please don't shoot me. He's like literally begging Cassian, where
Well,
he's like, hey, nothing happened here. I swear I won't tell anyone. He just like something like we didn't even meet, and he just like hit his head against something else.
so there's
And
two themes that are set up in here, which I thought were really interesting. Which is one is that he's the first thing Diego Luna is like, "Tell me what to do," and
yeah,
then
oh yeah, yeah,
for the rest of the episodes, if you pay attention, almost every character tells them what to do.
yeah.
Every at the end of every discussion and stuff, they tell him exact. You should go do this because he's still aimless, so he needs someone to show, like, tell him where to go. Like he doesn't know it yet, which is I think a really
It's,
cool theme in terms of like making it clear that this is like he's lost, he's like he's aimless,
it's
you know. And
it's
I think
basically yeah. Sorry, sorry,
no,
sorry.
I think that adds to the thing that we were saying earlier, where like in the first two episodes, if he's like we don't know where we're going, it kind of gets is. I was okay with it because it's like he doesn't know where he's going either, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah, sorry, you were gonna say.
Oh no, I was actually just gonna add in where it's like it's basically he's a Hispanic Han Solo, and a very real version of that. Not like like if you were to imagine like obviously Han Solo is not like a murderer in that sense, but he has shot people, and
He
he
shoots
shot
first.
first, and he's a smuggler, and he's always indebted to like gangsters, and he's like 80 years old, and he's still trying to steal shit and smuggle shit with Chewbacca. So and at that point it's become mundane to him, where it's like he's just like a cool guy, pirate like that in a sense, but it's like if you were to take a character like that and be like, hey, we're gonna do like a real dark story about how you became like that, rather than what Solo was. Solo was like in the same tone as what Han Solo becomes in Star Wars. But it's like if Solo were to be done as Rogue One was done, this would be the mix that would happen. Like if it's done by someone who can really do well,
Yeah,
and yeah, because everything you think about it, like, oh, how did Han Solo become like this, or how did it's like you see all his stuff, and the fact that he is, how you said, like he is still aimless even as an adult, even though he's gone through all this, he's still like he's trying to figure shit out for himself, and he's still like always like on like a path to something, like he's looking for his sister, and now he's doing this, and now he's doing that. He's not settled at all, and he's just moving from place to place, like just getting in debt, and we'll get more into that later, like,
and then
how he is with other people.
the second thing that gets set up is the theme of people trying to tell a false story to cover up stuff,
Right.
to not have to deal with it. It's the cops does it first, then Diego Luna does it next with his buddy, where he's like, "Yo, you
Yeah.
gotta make the story," and then the official is doing it too because he doesn't want to
Which,
report the murder. But
and it
like,
seems like the most realistic thing that's
yeah,
happening.
but I also thought that was a good setup to be like, not everything people tell you will be what it is. Where like
Right.
the shoe hasn't dropped yet,
Hmm.
but there's specifically in episode 3 with Stellan Skarsgård, they, and the guy, like even the dude that we talked about, the main bad guy, where like he's one thing at first, but the more you find out about him, you realize that's not really him. And I think this is going, hopefully, is going to be a running theme. And I think it's cool that that's set up so, like, right there, both those
Right
themes
away.
of our aimless character and not everything is what it seems to be.
Right.
And that's why I think that that gave me the vibe of like this more of a, like, it's going to be a spy thriller because it is going to be who's betraying who's playing on what side, and like
Right.
I at least I hope that's where it's going. That's my hope for the show.
Yeah,
But
that was actually very interesting. I didn't think about, like, obviously I knew that but for me it was just more like, but I didn't think of it from that point of view. That's very interesting. That a theme of like it's everything's not what it seems and everything is not what you're told.
yeah, while everybody is telling our main character what to do,
Right. Right.
like
Right.
he's
Yeah.
like not even that
An aimless
he doesn't even
protagonist.
do what everyone tells him, but like
Yeah.
everybody
He
is,
always fucks up, like he
yeah.
in some way or the other, which leads him into further shit.
Yeah, but it's not even like as cliche, which is great. Like it, like he
Yeah,
doesn't
I
fuck
like
up
that. I like that
everything.
part.
Like it's more like realistically shit has
Yeah,
repercussions for his actions.
exactly.
He's not just like a
So,
bumbling idiot. Like he's doing things
yeah,
that he needs to do to get him where he needs to be after what happened. But yeah,
and
everything just has
and
real
and that was the
repercussions.
interesting part of how the episodes were dealt in terms of a story, where it's like it's like a flowing motion of like it's not like there's a story already in mind and now scenes have to happen
Yeah,
to make that story happen. It's more uh like our main character is on a path, but then this happens and now the story has to move in this direction because he gets into this, right. He murders a cop by mistake,
it's
but
like
and
it's
yeah.
like the story feels as lived in as the world. Where
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's hard to say the word realistic for the world and stuff, but it does
And
feel,
it's a lot more grounded and
yeah,
a lot more natural in
but
how
it's
things would happen
believable.
in reality.
Everything is believable. Where like
Right.
in the context, this world is believable. These characters
Yeah.
are believable. The story is believable. So you're not sitting there questioning motives or events and stuff. And I think,
Character motivations were
yeah,
very clear. I made a
yeah,
note of that, but that was more like by the end of episode 3, where I was like, okay,
yeah.
they're yeah. But so and for me, a very important moment of that thing was, first of all, like you said, like when the cop like starts straight away, like, hey, like, you automatically, he doesn't like stick to like, hey, you don't know what you're gonna get into if you get up, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. He immediately just starts begging for his own life, because that's what a regular person would do.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't see anything, and it's usually the opposite, where it's like a bystander, an innocent person who may have seen a cop do something wrong, would be like, hey, please don't, like, I swear I won't say anything. But here is the other way, where it's the cop who's like begging this guy who he was like shitting on the whole time, and who he and it was set up that these two cops are going to intimidate Cassian and show like their power over him, and it immediately flips, and not through like Cassian like doing something cool, he like does like a Mandalorian two 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 two, and now everyone's scared of him. Like he by mistake, he was just like he's just trying to like get these, like he was just trying to hurt them, and he by mistake like kills him, and he's like, hey dude, this, like, even the cop understands, like, oh my god, this guy would go to these lengths, and he immediately starts coming up with it. And then when Diego Luna is first denying it to himself, I wanted to see like a lot more remorse and regret on his face once he realizes that, oh shit, I just murdered a cop. Not so much that, oh my god, I'm going to be in so much trouble, but more so like, oh shit, I just like, because that's how his death scene is depicted to us, the audience, where you feel the impact.
Well,
But then it later you get to realize
it's not
why
the
he
first.
doesn't have that
Yeah,
look.
it's not the first person he's killed. It is
Exactly.
like you said. It is the fact that it's a cop and he knows the repercussions
Yes,
of what
yes.
just happened.
Yeah.
But my one note for that was just like I felt that's all this stuff made it already seem like this feels human. Like the guy begging.
Yeah,
It's like if
very human. Yeah.
it makes like this is what would happen if your life is in danger. You would
Yeah.
beg for mercy.
Yeah. Whether you're a cop or not.
Yeah.
And whether, even if you're like a sleazy, like guy, gross cop, who knows he's been fucking around.
Yeah.
It's very human. Like, that's the word I was. And yeah, so he's begging and he takes the gun and you think like he might just Cass might just run away, and he shoots out the cop, right?
What have you seen Rogue One? I was like, you gonna pull that trigger? I know you.
And
It's
we
like
know.
it's about that time. You have about like 10 seconds left.
And pull. And pull.
I was like,
And
yep,
yeah,
that's Endor's now. That's Cassie.
that's Cass. That's my boy Cass.
Exactly.
And yeah, and so that's scene. And then you see BB.
B2
I'll,
EMO.
I'm just gonna call him B
B.
because that's what they call him.
It's a winner. B.
There's
I had to look up. I also got B2, but online they're saying it's B2 emo. Where I'm like, I'm still not sure. Is there people just calling him emo? Is it? Did they
I think
actually
it might
go
be just because he's shy
EM?
and
But it's written B2 EMO, so I don't know. So he's our little emo robot.
you know he's like very insecure.
But we get our little Wally scene.
Yeah, and he's just like traveling through all this shit.
I already loved it the
And
second. I was like, oh, you got
that's when, yeah, when and then he stops to like he sees like these wild hogs, these wild boars slash whatever,
where I was
just coming
like,
through.
oh shit, it's the dogs from Solo. I knew I should. It was worth it all along just for those dogs. I know exactly where they're from, and then I don't. I think they're different though.
Yeah,
It's like,
I
come
think it
on,
might be.
come
I don't think
on.
I've seen it.
Why did you have to use different dogs? Make it worth it. I watch Solo.
It's a different animal. It's like a wild boar because that's what the kind of sounds it was. But
Yeah,
like a
because
pet boar.
in Solo, like they have such a
Yeah.
short scene, like you blink it and you miss it almost. But I was just like, come on, make it worth it. And I
Wow.
spent 2 hours and 15 minutes watching this movie. Anyways,
But yeah, that's our introduction to B, the android. What do we call him?
droid, yeah.
The droid, not the android. Android is the
Your
okay.
voice is cutting in and out a bit.
Oh shit! Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
It's okay. All right. So yeah, so it sees like these wild hogs coming his way, and it just stops and like shrinks and puts like a thing over himself and tries to act like he's like a trash can. And he sees like the hogs going away, and he kind of seems relieved. And then one hog comes like pisses on him. He's like, oh, and he does like he gets out a little thing that like gives him
Oh
like a
yeah, yeah.
current,
Like the
like a taser, like a mini taser.
yeah. So
And yeah,
R2D2 has it's his
right.
favorite move.
It's his favorite. Yeah, and the hogs runs away, and it's like, oh, and then he goes into meet, and then we see that it's obviously we know that it'll be Cass's personal droid, and when it starts speaking, it stutters. And then you realize that it's because it's got like a defect with it or something,
Well,
which is why it stutters.
I guess they haven't said yet why it's stuttering, but they
Okay.
keep. What I found interesting with that was I never thought about what powers a droid and the fact that he needs to recharge like a Roomba. I thought it was kind of
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like never thought about it. And also, well, like I'm only jumping ahead, like the conversation he has with the robot, but the fact that two lies take him more energy.
Yeah, I thought that
How
was
that
fun.
lying at all takes extra energy, like
Yeah.
it's extra effort, and he's
He
like,
has to be programmed for it.
he's like, it's okay, I have enough of a charge to lie. I thought it really cool. We're like, yeah, like why not? I never thought about it. How do these guys run?
I made a note of that too. That I was like, that was a nice little mix of like how would a like a robot just like programmed to be like a certain way? How would it know to lie? Because lying is such a human thing. But it's
Well,
not like
I mean, it's set up in Solo, out of all things, but basically how I'm starting to understand these droids is that they like there's bounty hunter droids. There's droids that are like sentient normal being that are just like live
oh
on their
right, right,
own.
right.
But there's
IG-88
um
or something like that. He was in Mandalorian.
yeah, IG-88. Yeah, there's like there's a bunch of them that are bounty hunters, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in Solo is the whole thing that the robot is like so sentient that is like in love with Lando, and like
Yeah.
it has a revolution at the mining facility where she frees all the robots
It was
and they all
like
go
that was the worst thing in
mental.
the world.
Terrible. Where like I don't know, so bad. It just made no sense. But like it would be an interesting thing to like think about and like talk about, explore. But the way they did it was
Yeah,
just terrible. But yeah, so from I don't know. So yeah, the programming thing. I mean, they still haven't explained it properly. Where like in
he could just be
Solo,
joking for
like
all we know.
in Solo, it's a machine, like a little thing they put on the robot, and that enslaves him. But
Yeah,
then in Rogue One, he was programmed to be an Imperial droid, and then he reprogrammed him to be free or something like
right.
that. Where like yeah, I don't know. Apparently, we're gonna get a droid movie at some point, and maybe they'll explore it a bit more.
It should be a side.
But yeah, I still I found it very interesting to think about like how they're powered. But now I think about
I
like
agree.
what does every other droid go home like a Roomba
That-
just stand in a corner?
so that's the problem that I have with all these little things. Where it's like when you mention these kind of things, it's like it opens up
So many
like
questions.
you, yeah, and like normally those things don't need to be answered,
Yeah,
but if the show or if the content itself opens it, then they're opening it up to questions.
yeah, agreed.
So, but yeah, but I thought that was a we'll tell you what that scene is before we get too much into it. Where he walks in, strolls in, to the little thing where Cass is living, and I think, and then they have their little dialogue of like Cass is telling him, "Hey, I need you to. Someone comes. I need you to tell them
Isn't
this."
that when he's trying to wake him up? Cass is actually sleeping, and he says
Right,
Cassian,
right, right.
Cassian, and then suddenly the
Yeah.
robot says Casa, and then we go to the first flashback.
Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. So the first flashback then happens,
So
and yeah, go on.
I'm a bit torn on the flashbacks.
Okay.
Where like
I'm guessing I have very different feelings about it from you. So
so
this will
at
be fun.
first
This will
I
be
was
interesting.
like they're not connecting to the present very much.
Mm.
And later on they did. So I took that back. But I was like to start with where I was like, well, like I don't know. I'm like I'm just a sucker for like it's been done so much. It's just like every TV show has to do the origin in a flashback.
Yeah.
Like I would be okay with giving me one episode that just deals with him as a kid and then we move
Mm.
forward.
A
I'm
flashback episode.
yeah. But at the same time, what had me interested still was when I was Rogue One, I was trying to like look for the points where I was like, these would be interesting things to explore, you know, like
Just talk about it. They never even mention like actually
I mean, the
go
main
deeper into it.
thing Cassian Andor says that really stuck out to me where I was like, that has
Yeah.
to come up was he says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like when I was like, I assumed that meant he was like raised by the rebellion, but I guess what he means is like that's when these guys crash landed on his planet and his life got turned upside down, and he had to move with his auntie to Bel Air. But I think so. I don't think, but I don't think the flashbacks are going away because like the way we
For a
left it up.
second, I was I was picturing him for that tiny little second as his actual auntie in the show, Andor's auntie living in. I was like, in
In
that's
Ferric, so
very,
like we have to figure out the name of the place.
that's very good.
But yeah, I think those flashbacks are here to stay because I hope they get more interesting. Where I just thought a couple of them where I was like, come on, drag on. And when you turn on subtitles, Disney's
It says speaking Canary,
Kanai, isn't it?
Canary.
I think it's
I thought it said Kenyan or something like
I
that.
think
I
it's
made sure to check.
I think it's Kanai or something. And I'm like, Disney Plus, what the fuck is this? Every other,
Speaking
but
Japanese.
at the same time, it's it's an interesting move in the way that every other language in Star Wars always gets subtitles, but this
Yeah.
one doesn't, which kind of like removes you a bit more from the story, like keeps Endor Cassian a little bit further away from you, where like
And
it's almost
it almost feels
documentarian.
like that it was a made up language. So I'll just quickly mention what that flashback is.
Well, one last thing with the
Okay. Oh,
language,
sorry.
though.
Yeah.
One thing that I think was a cool retcon was with the language. I found out later that Diego Luna, apparently, when he did Rogue One, he didn't speak English very well. So he said a lot
Oh,
of his lines without actually knowing what he was saying. And he got a lot
really?
of backlash for his accent.
Mm,
And apparently he learned more English for the show now. But with this, they're giving a chronological in-universe explanation as to
mm.
like English is not his first language. That's
Right.
why he has that accent, and that's like explains everything a bit more, which I thought was a cool retcon
That's
to
pretty
like
good. Yeah.
work in the real life problems into
Mm,
it and make it work. You know.
that's pretty cool.
But yeah,
I didn't know about that.
yeah. Also, I just only found out this week where it's like, oh, that's okay.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah. But yeah, because I mean, I obviously everyone has that question, right? Why does everyone speak English, and why does everyone have different accents
I think
and
it's
stuff like that?
interesting that some are British, some are American. Now we
And
have
those are the two main ones, and then suddenly it's Spanish
and
or
now,
Hispanic.
well, now we have Cockney,
Yeah, yeah.
the most
It's
British guy
different
ever.
types. It's different types of British,
Yeah, like there was
and
this
yeah,
one black corporal who just sounded like a straight up like Londoner. Like, oh mate,
yeah.
bro,
He's like eating.
give
He's
me your
just eating
gun,
out of
bro.
takeout.
Yeah, oh bro, that also we gotta get to that. The blue takeout.
We'll get into that. We'll
Yeah,
get into that. But yeah, so the flashback. Suddenly you see Cassian as a child, like being woken up by his tiny little sister, or tiny, like his baby sister, or like his kid sister, I should say.
baby
That's
Jesus.
the appropriate. Must be like 6, 7 years old, maybe. The sister, and you see that they're all in like this jungle, right? And then you see only like kids around them, and they've set up like tents and camp, and some of them are like they've got like spears,
Strong Lord of
and
the Flies vibe.
yeah. So that's what I wrote, and I was immediately like, I was like, I hope the whole show is just them. I was like, I want to see Lord of the Flies in space. I don't care about any of this crime thriller stuff right now because it all seems the same. And when I saw that, and then when you see, and then suddenly you see them, right? So this is set up that it's just like kids. And it also reminded me of, I don't know if you know this, the South Park episode from like season 4, I think,
I mean, it's
where
Lord of the
the
Flies.
molestation episode. And it's only the kids who are left in town,
Yeah,
and it turns into like a shanty town, and the kids are like that,
it,
but just in South Park.
it's Lord of the Flies in South Park. Simpsons
Exactly.
has
So
it too, where they get stranded, and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I wanted Lord of the Flies in space, and I
But
was
it
like,
seemed like they already
please,
figured it out. Like they didn't have those issues.
yeah, exactly. And so and then you see this like spaceship or something like going over. It's like on fire, and you know it's gonna crash, and everyone's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And like you see Cass like holding his sister's hand, and that almost I like immediately took me to like I was like, oh, it's like a reference to Lost, where you see like shit like that. It's like a merge of things that happen in Lost, and then the whole the flashback of like this is present day, and then we're gonna flash back to his kid time,
Oh yeah.
and how we're going back and forth. That was like straight up out of Lost, I think.
I mean,
And
like I said, right? These days, I feel like so
yeah,
many shows do
it's
it.
been done. Yeah, Lost time like referencing like kids who are in their 20s were born after Lost.
It's like
Yeah.
Arrow did it, Boba Fett
Yeah.
did
Oh yeah.
it,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Arrow did it. Yes.
everybody is like you gotta do. That's why I'm just over it. Well, like just give me the story
Right.
straight, and then I can focus on each story,
Right.
unless it's like brilliantly done. Where like in terms of like it connecting, where
Mm.
like something's about to happen, you cut back, and because of that
Right.
flashback, that moment changes completely, and it's done very
Right.
rarely
So,
that
like
way.
thematically, they have to match. Like where whatever the it's always like even in Arrow they did that where it's like
Yeah,
why is the character doing this? Oh, here's a flashback scene to where they learned or where that moment motivated them to be like this.
I think
But
that's
in
why I
this,
had
it
a
almost just
yeah.
seems like just a flashback.
That's why I had a problem with it at first because
Right.
he's
Right.
just asleep and we just cut to this and it's like Okay,
which is kind of what I
because
wanted in
it
She-Hulk.
also it doesn't focus on his sister, which like we just okay that would have worked with like he's looking for his sister, but we only find out later okay it's the last day he saw his sister, but that first flashback is just
Right.
like you see the crash.
Yeah.
Where in
And
the crash was interesting. There's a yellow explosion coming out of it, so it was some chemical attack, I think.
I didn't know that.
But
I just saw it as like a spaceship crashing.
I thought so
And
too, but then when all the people inside were yellow and shit, I was like, oh okay,
oh right, once you get to it,
yeah.
right. But that's in episode 3. We'll get there in like 3 days.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to do a quicker summer for the other ones. I think. But anyways,
But I think we're discussing most of all of it at once anyway. So as we go along, it'll get faster and faster.
yeah.
But yeah, so they see this thing crashing, and I think that's where the flashback ends, and we come back into present day where he's talking to B the droid.
Yeah.
And he's asking him to lie, and there's like a funny scene where the droid's like, "Hey, I need more power to lie, and that's 2 lies, not 1, so I'm going to need an overcharge." And
When you're home in charge.
yeah, there you go. And then he goes off to his workplace, which is kind of cool to see that he's kind of like a construction worker or something like that. And he sees him talking, and they immediately get into like he sees his colleague slash friend, and they immediately get into, hey, it's like you just cheated on your wife, and the first thing you do is like you go to your homeboy and you're like, so I was at your place and we were drinking and then I passed out, and like that's how he just starts like straight up telling him like this is the story, and he's like, hey, what happened to your face?
It was
And
really
he's
well
like,
done with him just being
yeah,
like, "Are you serious?"
yeah.
And he's just like, "Okay," and then he's adding to it where like
He's adding to
yeah.
it, he's changing it, and and I like that the friend was like, this is what happened, and this is what happened. Everything you just said didn't happen. It's my story, it's my lie that we're gonna go with because that makes more sense, and that I'm also not like just some pushover
And he
who's
makes
just
sure
gonna
he
listen to me.
says it nice and loud also as he's leaving, you know, like tell your mom
Yeah,
to turn on the radio.
and I really liked one thing, which is that the small little details of like his tiny little
I was
injury
gonna
here.
mention.
It's always mentioned as
Yeah.
like a very important thing where people are like, hey, what happened here? And that small little thing gets them into a scene where he gets into much deeper shit, and he has to either tell a lie or explain the shit or hide something from someone,
But
from like a third person.
for me, it was also like it just makes it feel like this world is so controlled that
Yeah.
like the little smallest thing that's out of line, people
It-
immediately
it-
notice.
it's how a regular thing would be like if you came to my house and you have a little thing, I'd be like, yo, what happened? But in normal movies, like if a character gets into an action scene, by the next morning they've got like makeup on themselves, like they're so clean and fresh, or they might have a little limp or something, or they might have even a scar, but it's like no one. There might be like a throwaway line, hey, what happened here? Oh no, I just slipped, I just fell and I hit my head against the thing. They're like, oh, okay, and that's it. But here it's like mentioned. Everyone asks him like, yo, what's up with your face? Like, like what happened?
Do
Like,
something about it.
yeah, and he has to always like either tell a lie or like explain the situation or hide the truth from like a person who may be eavesdropping or something like that, because his entire life is like so much secret and so much shady shit that he always has to be lying to every single person about every single thing. And he has like 1,000 lies now that he's told this person one lie, this person one lie, this person one lie, and it all like comes crashing back on him. So that was very, very good how it was
But
introduced.
I noticed that too. That cool.
I'm glad that we both noticed that where it's like these tiny little details, they go a long way. You know, you don't need to have like
This is the show
Yeah.
that lives in the details, and I love it for that.
right, exactly, visually and in their writing.
Yeah,
Both. It's
it
not
seems-
just like, because there's a lot of there's a lot of things that put a lot of effort into visual details, and then there'll be a lot of things that'll put a lot of effort into their writing. But this, like, I feel like they found like a really good balance of like a very detailed lived in world in both aspects.
I like it. Just feels in that way mature, where like it respects the audience in terms of we
Yes.
don't need to beat you over the head with stuff, or if they're doing it so subtly enough that when you realize it, you feel like, I don't know. I like that sort of stuff where like you feel like you figured it out. You figure out what they're
Yeah.
trying to tell you,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
them telling you outright, and it feels like you're part of the journey of that
It's
story,
it's not like a character looks at the screen and tells you, "Hey, we're connecting the A and B plot."
basically. It's like the complete opposite. Yes.
Call back to podcast 2 or 1 or 3, whichever one that was.
It's like hour 5 of number 3 or something.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so second reference to She-Hulk. The first one was my note about like what I would have preferred that they did in She-Hulk was that they cut back to the flashbacks rather than, or they have like one flashback or one origin story rather than have a terrible
But
origin story that you just get through.
see, my counter
But not to
argument,
mention too much.
my
She-Hulk.
counter argument would be like, imagine that first episode you would want as a flashback. Imagine an episode 9 and we're still doing flashbacks to that.
Like I would have preferred if all that stuff would be just few little scenes sprinkled throughout, like how we said, like with Arrow, like it's thematically it shows that character motivation is was because of this over what they did. Not I'm not saying that as like this would be the right way to do it. I'm saying I wish they would have at least done this rather than at least doing that.
I get it. It's
You
a
know what I
personal
mean?
preference
It would
where
have fun
like,
to see. Yeah.
yeah, where I'm just at a point where now I just want to get it over with. But
I like that they got it over with in terms of like we said, like in terms of what they're doing, but just the way they did it was terrible in my opinion.
yeah, I think it's more about like that the story of what happened there was just not as interesting. But I
Yeah,
think that's why they usually make them flashbacks, because they're like, as a whole thing, it's not as interesting. But at the
right.
same time, then like, why drag it out and have me go back there so many times if it's just somewhat interesting? I don't know.
Because it could be somewhat interesting, and if it's just sprinkled throughout, where you spend like literally
Yeah,
like 2 to 3 minutes here and there, rather than have just like something you have to just watch just to get over with. Especially when it's like when that stuff should actually play more into the character as it does with all these people. You know what I
like
mean?
I would have been okay with like, let's say all the flashbacks from these 3 episodes. That's the opening to the show. Cut to the brothel, and then next
Right.
week we get the next part of the flashbacks where like we're done with the story of him getting on the ship and with the lady, and then next week we get to find out more about the lady, and like
Right. Yeah.
do it in segments like that
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like I said, it started off a bit like, really, is this how we have to do it? But okay, like I said, by the end it was more interesting.
Right.
But
I like the story of the flashback, but not the cutting back and forth. I agree with you on that part.
yeah,
I was like for me in the beginning, I was just like, I actually want to see that story more than I want to see how these kids came to be on this island and how they're surviving like this, and the way they do it with like just and like we said, like we mentioned, like on the subtitles it says speaking whatever.
yeah,
To me it almost felt like that was like a thing where it's like these are just kids who just came up with their own language. Like I don't know if you remember, there used to be this thing called the P language that girls in schools used to talk when we were all kids, and no boys would understand because we were not smart enough. And it was like maybe these kids just came up with their own language like while trying to survive on this island, because you see like older kids and then younger kids and you see like their hierarchy. It felt like battle royale also in a few things where it's like maybe that was the scenario that happened prior to all this, and these were I would love to like watch more of that if it wasn't even connected to Star Wars.
yeah. I get
Like
you.
if this was just like Goonies in space or Lord of the Flies in space, and it just had like a completely different name and like
Have you seen the Ewok movies?
no, that
They're
what that is.
kind of. It's about a group of kids, and I think they made 2 of them at least. I don't know
Oh,
if they did 3, but like, yeah, it's a
sweet.
bunch of kids living with the Ewoks, and it's kind of like
Oh,
that. but
But like not even like I don't even want Ewoks because that itself makes it like too like little too like kiddish or something.
but
I would
Ewoks are
love to
fucked
see
up
just
if
like
you really like get down to it. They're
oh
like,
really
no, I'm kidding.
the dark
I was like, they
Ewoks.
actually they eat the kids.
They mentioned that in like someone mentioned that in the Rise of the Skywalker video where it's like they would like to see like a cult of like dark Ewoks who have been like drained of their soul by like the living of Emperor Palpatine. And it's like
I
on that
mean,
lightning planet, there's just like these like drained out zombie looking
I
Ewoks
think
as a horror movie. That would be so fun.
weren't they trying to eat Han Solo and Luke at the beginning?
Yeah, something like that.
So
Yeah, but it's supposed to be done in like such a. If you turn that into like a horror movie, that would be
yeah,
so terrifying. You see these little monsters.
just in the dark,
But
those
yeah,
eyes.
yeah, those eyes are glowing. Like, it would be so scary. Like you give,
Right, Gremlins, but
you
it's
give it to
Ewoks. Ano-
Gremlins,
Uh,
but,
ano-
but like Ewoks produced by Blumhouse.
Another movie that came to mind when you were talking about it, what it reminded you of was Apocalypto a little bit.
Which one? Sorry.
Apocalypto, in terms of like everybody speaking a different language and like
Oh right, yeah,
being
yeah.
in the jungle. But yeah, anyways, let's continue.
Oh yeah.
Where
Okay,
the
so yeah,
robot
so
was
let's
talking about
continue.
the
So
lies and
he meets his friend, his work friend, and he's like,
yeah,
"Hey, you need to tell this, blah blah." Yeah, and then the work friends as well. Then he goes on to meet someone, and then we find out it's some girl. She's like fixing a car. She's like
I think
a
it's
mechanic or something.
a pod racing engine.
Right. Oh yeah, and they mention hey all right, they mention that later. So he starts talking to this girl and you see that they have sexual tension or something and that they're close and then you see a third man appear and he's like, "Hey, everyone's betting on the pod racing. Do you guys want in on this?" And I was like that is like so nice for
But
them to
way
like
more
just like
British.
feel so real.
But way more British. He's way more British.
Yeah, of course. Because he's a very nice guy, right?
Wait, I
He's a
first was
nice
like,
guy.
is he Irish? Or is he? I think it's
Yeah.
Cockney. Wasn't
I
just
think,
a bloke.
I think
But
it's
yeah,
comedy.
I love every time pod racing comes up because they don't do it
Yeah.
enough. That's one of the things from like the first movie, the episode one rather, which like they should have like done more with it. Everybody agrees
Yeah.
pod racing is cool, even if they
Yeah.
hate the rest of the movie. There, but like pod racing is
Yeah.
is a cool idea.
I agree. And the fact that like these normies who are like these like broke ass people like living, they're all like betting on it like it's a horse track or something like that, you
One
know?
thing I was thinking was
And
like,
it's so normal, like
this is what it's like to live in Star Wars. Like, if you
exactly
want to know
that
what
exactly.
it's like
Yeah.
to be a normal human being in the world of Star Wars, this
Yeah.
show is finally giving us that.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like the little bit of like Luke we get at the beginning or anything else, really. Like, this is real life. Real
Yeah.
people living in real life. I don't know. I thought that was awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It
Like,
felt so grounded in Star Wars.
if I go to Disneyland to Star Wars World, I want it to be like this. I want there to be everybody's lying to me and trying to fucking steal my money and shit. Well, anyways, I think that's Disneyland, anyways. But, but yeah, I don't know.
Oh
That'd
my
be cool.
God.
It would be cool. Like they have their little Star Wars world now. The next one is like a mining facility, and it's just everybody's a dick to you.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Everyone's
you can show me your card.
like brothels and like
Oh yeah, exactly.
Disneyland for adults.
Hey, someone's
There
got to
you
do
go.
it.
There's someone there. They did add. So yeah, and then Andor's like, "Hey," and they're like, "Hey, yeah, we'll just talk to you in a second." And Andor's like, "Hey, what's up, man? I noticed like you guys in a relationship."
So you're
She's like, "Yeah,
fucking.
you would, yeah, you fucking, yo, you fucking, what's going on, bro? What's up, bro? We're having some,
What's good? You fucking.
Oh, and she makes a remark about him as well. She's like, "Hey, what happened here?" And he's like, "Oh, I fell." And then she's like, "On to what? A jealous husband?" So I'm assuming maybe they dated and he cheated on her or something
Yeah,
like
some
that.
sexual tension.
And yeah,
And she
and
reminded
then
me
yeah.
of young Salma, not Salma Hayek, Penelope Cruz, a little bit.
Oh, okay, right. I didn't get that. I got like very hot vibes.
I mean,
I
young
looked her up.
Penelope Cruz was hot.
Oh no, like I'm just saying, like I just got regular Hispanic hot vibes. Like Penelope Cruz is like a next tier, God
Oh, okay,
tier.
okay, fair enough.
You know?
Yeah, true. I mean, this
Yeah,
they
don't be
made it
racist,
look,
bro. Just
but
because they're Hispanic.
I was thinking about like how did they do her hair? Because it's probably a wig, anyways. But I don't know why I was thinking about it. But like she had very like frizzy hair.
Wait, who are you talking about? The girl in the block brothel or
No, no, the girl that was working on
Bix?
the
Bix.
is that her name, Bix?
Yeah, Bix.
The one who was working on the pod racer, the one we just
His
talked
his
about.
his, his friend, his
Yeah,
friend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was that her hair? I forgot.
her hair was like super frizzy, and I was like, if that is her actual hair, do they like make the wig like, or the hair like, do the hair like few days before and just tell her don't just sleep in it or something? I don't know. I don't know why I got caught up on it, but maybe because I worry about frizzies and shit. But like, I I was just like, oh shit, that must be. How do you do that on purpose?
Yeah,
Anyways,
maybe that's what they're showing that it's like they're like she like again I guess this is a pretty good point that she's not wearing makeup. She's not like even though like they're all supposed to be like this is supposed to be like a ghetto, right? And she's a mechanic. She's like working. She's a grease monkey in a sense. And so when she gets like she's like on the ground with the thing, like fixing the thing, she's got the helmet on, and she slides off. She takes the thing off, and her hair is just fucked up. Like it's not like fully nicely combed or like in like some style, because it's Star Wars and we have to make it look cool and not like it should be on Earth.
the
She's just
mask
some like
looked
chick in the ghetto.
the mask looked a little bit like a droid's head. That's the only thing.
I
But yeah.
think maybe that was like a bait switch where it's like, oh, maybe it's like a droid, but no,
Oh,
not
I
a
was
chick.
thinking it would be cool if that's what they do. They just like they found an
Mm.
old droid and they used his face.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be. That's probably what they would do in a
Right.
in a in a in a place like this and in the environment that they set up, where they would just find like fucking broke ass droids and just take whatever like what sort of Ray was doing in the beginning of Force Awakens. What's the word?
Scavenging.
Scavenging. That's the word. All right. And so they have this little banter of like, hey, what are you doing at blah, blah, and she's like, and then the guy comes out and he's like, hey, you fucking it? What's going on? What up? What up? What up, B? And she's like, he would do anything. And she's like, oh, and he's like, that didn't answer my question. And we're like, okay, cool.
Kind of did.
We understand the relationship between all three characters from this one scene. I'm glad.
I think
Uh,
she's saying
yeah.
he'll do anything for me kind of implies they're fucking, right?
What implies that what?
They're fucking. She
Oh
gave him
yeah,
that
yeah.
hint.
But yeah, but I'm just like it's like we the audience understand, he understands, and he's like, hey, that why don't you give me like a it's almost identical to how we would talk like
It's
in
like I
real
want
life.
positions. Give me details.
You know
When? How many times a week? Where have you done it? Have you done it in
what's
our
going
bed?
on.
Is he wearing my shirts? He's like, that's what's going on in his head. But he's like, all right,
Yeah.
fine. And then he goes, and then what? The next thing he tells the guy that like, maybe you should find someone else to fuck.
Oh, yeah. And oh yeah, so that's another thing where the boyfriend, we just call him the boyfriend.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, she seems upset, and he's like, oh yeah. Cass is like, oh yeah, and boyfriend's like, she always seems upset whenever you're talking to her. And he's like, maybe you should like, hey Cass, maybe you should stop coming around here. You can see that he's kind of jealous of Cass and their relationship, and how it always upsets whenever it always upsets Bix. And Cass is like, well, maybe you shouldn't be involved with such a complicated woman. And we're like, ooh, like she's complicated. We get it, Cass. You're trying to like,
Tension.
yeah,
Tension
you're trying to
rises.
see, yeah, exactly. Character tensions, right? Wow. I didn't think I would, after watching Rogue One, I didn't think I'd be into all this, but I am. Wow. And yeah, so, um, and then where does Cass go? I kind of forgot what happened after that. Like, what's the next scene?
From there,
Do you remember? Maybe I can quickly try and see if uh, I can
um,
quickly check this out.
let me think. Okay, we have that scene. Then he goes. We're coming towards the end of the episode. That's what I
Okay, okay,
remember.
okay. I got it opened while. being on the thing.
Isn't this when we cut to the officers?
Yes, yes, exactly. That's wait, no, the officers come first. Oh, the officers is before the scene. So
Okay.
there we go. I'm glad we looked that up and you thought of it as well. Where right after he has Cass has a scene with his work friend, and they come up with their story and their lie together of what happened the night before. We now the new scene is where there's a fat big white guy who's in charge, and he's older and he's got a mustache. And I couldn't tell who that actor is because he kept reminding me of um, uh, Borat in disguise as the American in Who is America? I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
It looks so fucking similar to him and the way he was talking. Where I was like, have I seen this? And then I was like, is that can't be him? But it maybe the actor actually looks like that. But it almost seemed like someone in makeup and like a suit or something.
He definitely
But
had like one of those faces where like I haven't seen this guy before.
right, yeah, exactly. And the way he was acting, the way he was delivering lines seemed so natural and normal.
Yeah.
Where I was like, this seems like an actor who is an experienced actor. You know, he seems really good at how he's delivering these lines and the
He
scene.
almost made the other guy look worse because of how good he was.
Yes, exactly. So I was just gonna get to that where so the scene is basically you see this young guy standing like, you know, and he's looking like a soldier, right? And behind the desk is the fat cat. I did this, guys. Don't cancel me. It's a phrase. The fat cat, white guy in charge, the older guy who's who's like
Commanding officer or
the
something like
yeah,
that.
commanding officer, and he's sort of they're going over what happened last night, and they're going over the fact that two police officers
Well,
were
there's a
murdered.
little nice touch character building where he's just like, "Did you alter your uniform?" And the guy's like, "I added pockets."
So
And also the uniform is fucking tight on this guy. Like,
so that was my problem. One tiny little problem where I'm like, I get like that humor would have worked had it not been for the kind of character that
but
they were going for,
I don't know.
where
It
he's
wasn't
supposed
even
to be
played
like,
as funny. I feel like it was more played as like this
okay,
guy is a dork who really takes his job way too serious. Like he's so much so he will
okay.
alter his uniform to like it's more practical because he is like he's in that chain. He wants to be there.
Just the wordings that they used, it felt like it was supposed to be like a tiny little because he doesn't say like I added stripes. He goes, oh, just a little bit of the pocket piping. Now I've been around garment manufacturing a lot in my life, so I've heard that term so many times: piping, pocket piping, and a little bit of tailoring. The way he said it and the exact words that he used, I was like, why would you throw that in when he's supposed to look like this like hard ass soldier? Why would he know what a pocket piping is, right?
I mean,
Maybe they talk about that later,
I
but
think it was a
I
setup
personally don't
for
like it.
letting you know that like there's more to this guy. That like he's not just like the hard ass who's hunting down Cassian.
I agree with that, and I also appreciate that, but I don't like the way they did it.
Okay, I get that. I enjoyed it. I thought
Yeah,
it was because
I
it's so
really liked.
quick. You know, it was so like. At first, I was even like, "What do you say?" I actually had to like put it back. And what do you say? I was like, "Oh, all right, that's an
like
interesting."
that's a scene I would expect in like a James Gunn or a Taika Waititi movie,
No,
where
it
there is
wasn't
a
like
serious scene.
that funny.
No, like a very quick, subtle
But
little
it's
bit of like making the characters feel real. My only problem was because of the character and so far it's been such a like pretty dark and like more like I was just like in that moment because obviously later on we get to see okay like it doesn't matter that much, but just in that moment when it happened I was like, wait, why would you make a joke like that, like and why would if the fat cat white guy had said the words, did you like pocket pipe that thing or like alter it, and he would be like, yeah, I just got like a few stripes, and I would understand the point of like, oh, he's such a dork. He takes his job too seriously, and like he wants to look
So
like
your problem is that he knew
much more
those
cool.
terms.
Yes,
But what
for the
you don't
kind of
know.
character that
But you
is.
don't know his family. Maybe his parents are in the garment industry.
But exactly. So I hope that's the case, right? I hope
You
that's the
never
case.
know.
But in that moment, I was just like, that felt really out of place
See,
for him to
I like,
use that terminology.
but I like that they started off with that, so that you almost
Mm,
forget about it, and he just has the fucking burst out and like that afterwards. He's such a character where you just expect him to be like the cliche bad guy of the show,
right, right.
and that's like a little tee up of like, there's more to him. And then
Mm,
you get it then later in the other episodes where you're like, oh, he's not that guy. But like I
yeah.
think I
He's
like it.
trying really hard to be.
Yeah, that's why I think that
Right,
it's
right.
something like Hans Lande and like Inglorious Bastards, where like he is a killer, he's a Jew hunter, but he has these little ticks of like he has a cigar, he has to use a cigar a
But
certain way,
again,
you know.
so that stuff is done so perfectly in terms of the way it's written
I,
out and the way the
I
character
mean,
and
you
the way
can't, of
they
course, compare it to that,
obviously
but I see
so
it
that is
as something like that, where like you're
right, right,
giving
right,
you're building that character to be
right.
more three dimensional, you know. But
I got you. That that does make sense though. What you're saying.
let's just say in our canon, he's from a family of
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you never know.
yeah,
Maybe his dad was a tailor,
yeah,
and he's just this guy who's trying to be like, but he's always imagined himself to be like this cool, like how a dork kid would imagine himself to be like an army guy. You know, oh
yeah,
man, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then when he's actually on the battlefield, he's like, oh my god, I'm not ready for this.
exactly.
So yeah, okay.
Maybe he
So
made it big alterations himself.
it actually, if he did that, now that would be funny.
Like he secretly he was supposed to be in the garment industry, but he just like I don't
Yeah.
want to follow my
I don't want, yeah.
parents. I don't want to do what they tell me to, but like he was in it for so long that he can still do it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I grew up on action movies and emotionless soldiers. And the first thing, the way he was talking, and I was like, wait, it all. I don't know if you know the movie Soldier with Kurt
Yeah,
Russell.
of course. It
So
actually yes, I had that thought
that's
too.
that's the first. I was like, why does this guy seem like Kurt Russell? But he can't. His like bottom part of the mouth was moving when he was trying to deliver those lines, and I was like, you can do all of the stuff that you're doing, but in a better way. Like it was so distracting the way his mouth was moving. Where I was like, he's trying really hard to act like that, but I can't. Obviously, once you get to know his character more, it kind of makes sense. But even then, I was like, I don't know if that's just bad acting or not. But especially when he's contrasted with the guy, with the commanding officer, who's just so natural with the way he's talking and everything is so like he's literally just like a fat cat bureaucrat
But
who's
doesn't it make it actually better if you take it as the fact that he's just acting? That like
yeah,
that's not
it
him,
does.
you
Yeah,
know.
it does.
Like I
And
agree that
even
it felt
and the
off
fact
in
that
terms
even
of
when he's
acting.
acting, it's bad acting to the point where not just us viewers, but people in his environment also
Yeah,
see that he's acting.
exactly.
It's not like they think he's this hard ass soldier, and then slowly we the viewers get to know that he's not. It's like everyone around him sees that he's trying to be a hard ass soldier, but he's not,
What I
and he's
appreciate
just trying to
is
be like a dick manager.
I appreciate that in any other show they would start making fun of him or something.
Yeah,
The most we get is during the speech, the one guy going, "Oh God," and he's
yeah,
like, he stops
exactly.
himself though. He's like, "Oh shit,"
Yeah,
he probably, and then they linger on his like face on a like look, and he's finishing the speech while he's looking at the guy, and he's just like,
yeah,
"I will think about this moment for the rest of my life."
exactly, exactly. It's a dick manager who wants to be respected and
Yeah.
feared and like you better, oh, you don't think what, I'm your boss, bitch, like one of those guys. And like he notices every slight little eye roll that his employees might make
I
towards him
just had
and
the
like
thought.
literally like linger on that.
He's like almost literally the opposite of Cassian Endor, where like Cassian Endor has to be whoever he is in what situation
Right.
and is managing, perfectly to blend in and be whoever he
Mm.
needs to be when he needs to be, while this guy wants to be that
Right.
but is absolutely failing at it in every moment.
Right. That, that
Huh.
that's actually a really good observation, and how we get to see that they are like the protagonist and antagonist. So even in that terms, like the character, like
The
the
best villains are the ones who are the protagonists of their own story, and I think they're nailing that. Well, like you could watch
yes,
this from
yes,
his point of view, and
yeah,
like Cassian Ender would be the villain. You know,
yeah. Because the things that he says, he's like very upset about the fact that that two police officers were like
exactly.
got like murdered just randomly,
It's a noble
and he
cause.
yeah, it's a noble cause, and but he's like so delusional about his virtue and like all this stuff that you can see that he doesn't actually, like, he's still like a kid almost, where he doesn't actually understand what adult life and the real world and how complicated things are in real life. It's almost like he's only seen movies of like action heroes, and how dare he murdered an officer, and the commanding officer is like, hey man, these were two guys who were in a brothel drinking off duty, and they started shit up most likely. It's like, and then after that also he's like, what we'll make the story as like, oh, they tried to actually stop someone, and they got gunned down in duty, and we'll have like a tiny little parade for them or something. So it's
Not
like,
too big.
even,
They don't
yeah,
want them
and
to be
not too big,
heroes,
not too big.
but
Exactly.
that
We don't
guy.
want them to be heroes, because that guy is such a realist, where he's gone through all this, and he's a bureaucrat, where he's like, dude, these things happen all the time.
Yeah.
We have to just spin the story and get on with more important shit. We can't get fucking hooked on two random officers who were like in a brothel, who tried to start some shit and then got murdered for it.
Yeah, it's almost
Like, he's
like
like,
the other guy is like he wants to be a corpo so bad that like he
yeah,
hasn't faced it before, but he's like he feels like this is what needs to happen. This is what I expect the corpo to be. You
exactly.
know, a
Yeah,
fellow corpo or like a fellow man got murdered. We have to
yeah.
find out what happened and
We
do
have to
something
do
about it.
something. Like, yeah,
Which again,
exactly.
it's like if you flip it and make it like the protagonist of that story, you would
Yeah,
also be like, "What the fuck?" The corporation is saying, "Oh, let it be," but this guy's like,
yeah,
"No." You know, he's the hero. He is
yeah.
so far. Cassian Endor has is not like somebody that like you root for him
So
because
far,
you're
Cassian Andor
following.
has, yeah, exactly, and because we know he's the protagonist.
Yeah, which is a
Otherwise, he would just be some bad guy who just keeps getting into shit, and he's lying to everyone who he's close to, and he's always in debt to someone, and he needs to pay someone off or the other, and they're always like, hey man, can you just pay me off? Which we'll get into later with your
I
favorite
really
character.
I really appreciated it in those sense where I thought he was an interesting character in Rogue One in the sense of like there was always like you could never fully trust him, and like yeah,
Yeah,
he did not pull the trigger, but like then he's like, but I'm only following orders. You don't understand what it's like to follow orders, and there were so many layers to him
yeah,
that kept him like made him an interesting character. Where even in Rogue One, I was like, you're a very unusual character. We don't usually have someone that flip flops in, not in the way of like, oh, you completely just change your mind. Like, no, you just realistically, you're in this situation and you make some real realizations and you change yourself
right,
accordingly. And I feel like they could have gone the route of being like, oh, but you know what? He was a good guy from the beginning. He was always good. It's just like the war made him like, but like I like that they're setting it up like, no, he was always a bit shady. And that's why
mm,
the rebellion thinks they can use him because that's a good skill to have where like you can
right,
use that for infiltration and spy work. And you know, it's a cool
yeah,
idea where like what you'd have to if you think about it, like if you need a spy, you don't need the nice guy, you don't need the guy who like is a kiss ass and stuff. You need the dude who will do and convince everybody that he is what he tells you he is. And like
right,
you need the slimy guy basically. You need
yeah.
the dude who knows how to maneuver any situation, and it would be a shady character. I think it's a nice exploration of that idea.
And the fact that we're sort of seeing not the exact beginning, but sort of that he's still in his first sort of, like he's trying to maneuver all these things, it's like it's getting out of hand for him, and he's not able to fully manage it because he hasn't become fully experienced in it, right?
You can tell that
It's
like
like he's done shit like this before,
exactly.
but he's still sort of in the starting
Yeah.
phases of
Like
like. That's why episode 3, when Stellan Skarsgård comes in, almost like Stellan's experience is what helps Cassian. So you can sort of see that Cassian is going to sort of learn through all this. He's sort of like the what was that guy's name? Woody Harrelson to Solo,
yeah. It's
which
kind
we'll
of
get
like
into that. Not
like I
to
said,
jump too
it
much.
feels like
Solo.
he's been getting into shit all the time.
Yeah,
And he's been into like random shit always, but like
yeah,
it's been snowballing for a while. And it
yeah,
was always like it feels like he was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like he kind of knew eventually the shit would catch up. And it's
yeah,
like we're getting into the story just at the point that it's snowballed so far that it's elevating from this corporal construction site world into now he's falling into the rebellion because he can't stay in that world anymore. And I don't know. I think that it's also an
and
interesting.
to piggyback on that is that we like we are dropped in at the moment where it's like it, I almost made a She-Hulk reference again,
Mhm.
but it's like uh, he's been it's been snowballing for a little bit, but it's been snowballing in his world
Yeah.
with the people that like his ex-girlfriend or whatever, you know, his work friend, his droid, and then the boyfriend of the ex-girlfriend, and now all of a sudden, while he was on that path of snowball, it was this one tiny little random, like I'm sure he's been to other bars, I'm sure he's been to other brothels looking for the same thing. It was this one brothel, one night with these two cops, and because of him being at present at that moment, because of his snowball effect,
Wrong time,
this
wrong
small
place.
this incident happens, and now he's an enemy of the state,
Yeah.
and now he has to be on the run, like actually on the run. Like now he can't just be like, hey, I need to borrow some money, hey, can you do me a favor, hey, can you do this? And people in his environment are growing tired of him. Now he's actually become like a criminal
Yeah.
of the state, you know. So and we're dropped in at that moment where it's like now he's in like a real dilemma and a real pickle of like, I've pissed off all the people and taken all the help I need and from the people I know, and now I'm like running for my life from that. Like now everyone, like the government is after me, and it's like, now what do I do? I
Yeah.
was on this path to just looking for my sister, and now I'm on this way bigger, way worse situation, and how am I going to deal with all
Yeah.
that? Right?
Yeah.
All right. And so yeah, so that happens, and sort of like you know, the deputy is like is harping on like, hey, you know, but they were cops and they were murdered,
Yeah, I
and
think
the
we
other
covered that scene.
cover that. All right, so after that, we go to the part where he meets his ex-girlfriend, and that whole scene happens, and with the boyfriend, and he's like, hey, you shouldn't be with a complicated woman. And then we go to another flashback of and you see it's the kids. They're now like, you see the older kids with who are like sort of armored. They bring like this thing, and they're putting on like the commando stuff, right? And you can see like even though they're kids who've done this before, they've been living here, they're a little older, but they're still sort of kids because they're sort of like kind of excited about it. And it's still sort of like a fun thing to like, hey, we're gonna put the stuff on our faces and like, you know, and be cool and act cool. And then you see Cassian as a kid. You can see he sort of has a crush on one of the girls. It's implied that
I didn't get that,
where
but it could be, yeah.
oh okay, because he keeps
The
looking
older
at
one.
one girl.
The main one.
One well, there's two main ones.
Oh, okay.
And there's a guy who keeps like trying to like
Well, you
smack
mean
him out of the way.
the other one is the one that had the
No,
things
no,
like
no.
this?
So the one did this, and then one did this, and
So the
she's the
leader,
one who he copies.
the leader
Oh,
was
she's
the
the leader. Oh,
yeah.
right, right. So she's the one because even before they do
So
that, you see him always like looking at her, like, you know,
yeah,
he sort of has a crush on her.
could be. Yeah, I saw it
The
more
the
as
way he
like
looked at her,
Yeah, I saw it more as like I want to be part of the warriors and stuff, but it could also be a crush. Yeah,
I think it was like a little bit of both, where it was like he sees like the older kids, and he's sort of getting into that stage where he's like, "Hey, I want to be a part of the cool kids," you know.
yeah, I can see that.
And it's sort of also like a small infatuation crush on the leader chick, because the way he's looking at her and the way she looks at him, like it kind of reminded me of like teen rom-coms of like, but like in a much better way, like you know, not in a
I
teen
do
rom-com way.
appreciate how clear the storytelling is without us
Yes,
understanding the dialogue.
yes. Yes, exactly. I was able to. All I wanted to make sure was like, I hope I'm not missing out on dialogue.
Same.
But because I was like, oh, thank God, it's just like I don't have to actually listen. I can just watch visually, and hopefully they tell me everything I need to know, and they do. Like I got into so much detail about maybe he had a crush on her and stuff like that just through like the way they looked at each other and stuff like that. You know. So yeah, that was really good. And he sort of sees, he sort of copies, everyone's putting this and stuff, and the one girl does it here like this, and he sort of does the same thing, and that's when you see the girl notice him, and she's like, hey, what's up with, like, you know, she's got a
Now,
like
one kid is
older.
also like, "Don't do this,"
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
she's like, "No, let him do it."
yeah.
Right.
And that scene was just that.
Which
It's
again,
like,
at that point, I was
I,
like,
yeah, you're right, you're right.
what does that have to do with anything?"
You're right. like like all that stuff could have been like one short
One
scene
flash, the flashback.
as a moment. Yeah.
It should have been from the thing crashes, them doing that, him walking away from his sister. Make that a flashback.
Yes. Yes. That should have been one scene,
Yeah.
maybe right at the end, even like at the end of the episode,
Yeah.
where you just dole out this whole thing, and then you just cut to like a 5 minute flashback, and that
I'd be
could have
down
been
with
cool
I'd be
actually.
down with it.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
It's too
That's that.
much chopping
You're right.
without
And,
purpose.
and for no reason. Yeah, for no
Exactly.
purpose. That's the main thing. Where it's like how we discussed, like with the arrow and all that stuff. Where it's like even though they do that, it's every flashback has like a reason as to in relation to the scene you're currently watching.
Yeah. Every you
It's
gotta
not
find a
just the
balance.
flashback just to throw just to tell you what the origin story
I'll
is.
take a really on the nose flashback where it's just like this is exactly he says in the past
Yes,
that like
yes.
now I know how to believe in myself. Cut to the present is like
And,
I believe in myself.
or this is why you don't trust
You know,
anyone, and now
but
you see why he doesn't trust
yeah.
anyone.
So I'll take that over no purpose. But I think
Right.
the balance is
And
finding like a good way of like, oh, like I thought he was this and that, and like flashback. Oh no, he's something completely
right,
different. Cut back to
right.
now. That changes the scene completely now.
Yes,
Like that
yes.
is my favorite flashback.
And you sort of see like how count like how they counter each other. Where it's
Yeah.
like when he was younger, he was just like an innocent kid and blah blah blah, and now he's like this rugged, like shady person. Like
One of the
they kind of did that, but
I figured an example of where they do it well. Have you seen the movie Warrior?
uh,
Tom,
Tom
Tom,
Hardy in the boxing, no,
n-
it's kind of seen it, but not
amazing movie. One of my favorite,
really.
like in terms of fighting movies and stuff, one of the
Mm,
greatest. And the best thing they do in that movie is at the very end when the two brothers fight,
mm,
you can't decide who you want, who should win. But you the whole time you're with the main guy, the other guy you find out through like flashbacks and little bits and pieces. But it's so strong. Every time you do it, it strengthens his character, going from the antagonist to being just as
mm.
interesting as the protagonist. Where then at the end you're like, I just don't want them to fight anymore because
Right,
I don't want either of them to lose, and
right.
that makes it like that was, for example, a really good example of where they did it well. But anyways,
Getting cold in here.
for me it's getting hot. I need to go turn it down a bit.
I need to go to the bathroom. Maybe that's something. I always feel cold when I have to piss.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, always. It's
Just
like I automatically know when I'm like freezing.
what do you do in the winter?
Oh, dude, I piss all the time.
Just have
That's a
a
whole different problem.
you just have a
Whole
urine
different
bag
problem.
attached to your penis.
I have to keep walking back and forth. It's a whole. It's very annoying. It's very, very annoying. But yeah.
But
So I get my like feet start freezing. I don't know. People call me like people are like, "Yo, wow, what's up? Are you pregnant?" I was
oh,
like, "No, dude. That's just like
I thought you were gonna say they call me Pissfoot or something.
I was like my feet. Like I just my feet get really cold. I don't know. Afterwards,
So if you wear socks, you don't have to pee
no. So I can like I can delay it a little.
with socks.
Yeah, I'm wearing socks right now. Look, I literally that's why I turned to put my socks. To put my socks. I sleep with socks right next to me. Because then at night I can just put socks on in my sleep so that I don't have to get up and pee.
Oh, most people just go pee at night.
No, man, I can't. Like sometimes I just don't want
No.
to.
I like.
That's a whole different part.
I haven't gotten to that age yet, but I'm
We
ready
we
for it
get
one
to a
day.
flashback. We get to a flashback podcast of my entire backstory of peeing and other things, which we're now going to do now, which we were going to do earlier, and now after my mental breakdown, we might postpone that later for later. That was part of my mental breakdown. I was like, I can't have all that shit out there. I was like,
Can't tell people that I'm pee.
yeah. I was like, yeah. I was like, my family will look at me in a completely different manner, and I
They
can't
don't.
have that.
They don't
I
know
can't have
that.
that kind of judgment on me.
But they don't know that you need to pee when you're cold.
Oh no, like I don't even get into that much detail because I know that they just judge me for it. And their judgment is like way worse than like I couldn't care less of anyone, but for some reason like and I don't even care. It just like hits me harder somehow. If like there's like a look on like one of my like parents' faces and like that like God, what's wrong with you? And I start immediately questioning every single thing about myself and like the way I talk, the way I act, and it's like a George Costanza situation
I see. I see.
where Elaine's like, "What did your parents do to you?" And I'm like,
I see. I see.
"Yeah, but they're very nice people, though. They're very caring and very compassionate. But sometimes it can get a bit. It got hot real quick. I had to put the AC. I started sweating. I got to take my socks off. get, I get a lot of anxiety from all this stuff.
All right.
But anyways,
Let's
where
get
were
back.
we?
Um,
Let's get back to Andor. Is that what we were watching?
yeah. We did the thing with the paint for no
Yes, the
reason, and
pain.
we
And
cut back to the
yeah,
present.
the president is the deputy officer. Um, and he goes into like he's gotten strict orders from his commanding officer to just let this be and not really pursue this and just like come up with a story and like we'll do a small little parade and then we'll get on with our lives. Oh, and he mentions the commanding officer. He's like, dude, like I have to go for like a review from my commanding officers and like about the crime rate and stuff like that. And it just seems like a regular police station that you would see like in a Batman movie or like where it's like the commissioner is like more concerned about like, dude, our crime rates are going down and I gotta go answer to my bosses. Like I can't really give a shit about two like gross officers who are like in this. It's like that's just gonna. It's like how people say like, oh my god, there's gonna be a ton of paperwork,
Yeah.
and you as an audience like, dude, someone just got murdered, like,
Mm.
and for them it's like, oh my god, it's all that paperwork. Like let's just not deal with that. But this guy isn't like he's very young looking. Also, I think they made sure to show that and in contrast to everybody else like the officers and all that and so it cuts back to him and he goes like he goes into like a small little tech police office or whatever like the techies and they're sort of scanning things like his subordinates and he sees like this blip or something and he's like here, follow that or something like that and
I like that the aesthetics was kind of like 1960s NASA or something like that.
yeah
Very like sterile and like it looks old school.
Yeah,
I like it.
it's got like all these lines like you would see like how like road maps are like
Mm.
on the streets. And it's got like you see all the lanes which are like all interconnected and like it's like a jumble mess. And then and you have like tiny little dots and tiny little indications and I forgot the word. No, I'm forgetting the word that they use to like mark every single thing what it's called. The keys, I think they're called.
Okay.
Where it's like on a map, it's like it's like there's like this is a road, this is a highway, this is a this is a post office, this is a police office, like stuff like that, you know.
Well, actually, no.
I'm completely forgetting the word. It's on the tip of my tongue, but whatever. It's got those kind of indicators of what everything is, and then you see like a giant blip that's like moving, and he's like, okay, follow that, and you see that he's refusing to listen to his commanding officer and actually pursuing this further, and yeah, and he sort of like follow this, follow that, and his subordinates like wait, that's gonna take like all night, and he's the deputy's like, well, let me know if it's too much for you, because then I can find someone else.
I'm sure
And you
someone
see
else
like,
really wants this chair.
Yeah, who really wants this chair, and you can see like what kind of a character he is. And you're like, oh, okay, he's gonna be that guy, right? In the beginning, that's what you're thinking, and yeah, so it now goes to the scene where Andor is just like going somewhere, and then this guy just stops him, and he's like, "Hey man, you owe me money, and you need to pay me money." And your favorite part is going to come, where suddenly like they're having like a back and forth. He's like, "Yo, I'll pay you now, I'll pay you then," blah blah blah. And then he's like, "Oh well, you got to answer to him as well."
I think he specifically is like, the money's in motion, you know, it's starting to pop. It's like the old school hustler talk of like, you know, I used your money for my scheme, but the scheme isn't done yet. You know, give me a couple more days and it's going to go big.
And he's like, dude, I can't, like, you've been ducking me like this through the whole thing, and that's one of the things where it's like it's lived in. Like these things have like people are like have grown tired of him about how much debt he is. That's sort of like how like Han Solo was like always in debt to some creepy guy or Jabba or whatever, you know. And then his
but I like that it's not even like a syndicate or something. It's just like a homie. The other
it's some shady guy. It's some shady guy. Like if we were in a ghetto, everyone else, like a loan shark, would be in a ghetto, right? He would be a shady guy, but it's not.
It seemed like the dude was just like he had his own store, and that's why like when that big guy comes, he's like, I know. He's like, I know you're not a muscle. Like I know. What are you going to do right now? Tell me that. Like.
Oh, and the important scene of Cass telling we'll just call him a loan shark, but he's not really a loan shark. Telling him like, are you really threatening me? Like, you know, like, and it's sort of like a reverse threat towards that guy.
Because he's kind of pointing out that like he knows these guys are not. That's not who they are. They're not.
Yeah. They're trying to act tough.
Yeah, right. And he's like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Like, you think I don't know you?
And the one guy is like, I'm not gonna let. I put the subtitles on again. I was like, I don't know why we. I can't figure out all this before. I'm not one of those losers who's gonna let you float with all their money, right? So you know that they mentioned that he's not the only one. Everybody knows that Cass is indebted to so many people, and he always like sort of ducks out of it. And he's like, I'm not gonna let you float. Like when you owe a lot of people money and they just sort of forget about it. And you just sort of like, you know, like weasel your way out of all this, and then comes in your favorite character, Vet.
Isn't it?
What is that? What he's called?
Vetch.
Vetch.
VETCH, right?
Yeah. And Cass is sort of like berating Vetch. Is like, dude, you need this work so bad that you're gonna answer to this guy.
What?
And he's like, what? And Vet just says, what? I don't know.
He's like, I was just told to stand here.
Yeah, and he's like this giant alien-looking guy. Oh yeah, he said all I need to do was stand here. So okay, so you can tell that he's not even hired. Like he must have like just given him some money and like, Vet, can you just stand here and like maybe act like my muscle or something like that, you know? And yeah, that's fun. Where Vetch, very nice to see you. And yeah, I'm gonna Cassian's like, I'm gonna do us a favor and act like none of this happened, because it's almost like a reverse threat to the loan shark, and you sort of understand. Okay, he's not a loan shark; he's just some dude that he borrowed money from. And Cass is sort of like the dick in this whole scenario. Yeah, and yeah,
and it's like, don't let him, don't listen to this guy. What?
Yeah, and what? Oh yeah. Then the dude is like, don't listen. He's like, what?
What? Love
Yeah.
it.
And
I also love that it's a
so
practical costume, not CGI.
yes, yes, yeah, there's yeah. Oh my God. All these guys just look like just guys, like alien
There's
guys, like
so
alien
many in the
creatures. Yes.
background here and there. There was
Yeah.
one where I think it's when he's
A
walking
CGI
toward.
character in this would look so out of place. You would be able to point out exactly what it
There
is.
was only one character that stuck out where I think it's when he's at work or something, and there's a dude who's like yellow faced and he has like a lizard face or something. But as the camera pans from left to right, he's walking through the frame and he's doing like a really weird walk where it's like we're supposed to take in the scene and like the environment, but I'm so distracted by this guy walking so weirdly when he says
Yeah,
right in
you're right.
camera,
You're right.
like, hey, look.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? But yeah, otherwise, great. I love it.
Maybe that was like a cool puppet they must have designed there. Like we gotta put it in somewhere. Like
Maybe
someone
it's
worked really
a
hard on it.
it's a cameo of somebody. Maybe like
Could be,
they
yeah.
put a lot of people, like famous people,
Mm.
under makeup and
Oh,
masks.
right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that could be. But yeah, so then that scene gets done, and then now we're at the scene where um uh Bix, the girl, she's like leaving work in a hurry, right? Because Cass told her like, "Hey, I need your help with this something and blah blah blah, and I need you to do this." And so that was the earlier scene. So now you see her leaving work in like sort of like a hassled manner, and her boyfriend is like, "Hey, where are you going?" And she's like, "Oh, just errands," and she just sort of like hurriedly goes away. And as she's going, you see the boyfriend sort of follow her, right? And so they're sort of having this like follow up scene, and then you see her. She goes into some like like a little thing where she has to climb up the stairs, and there's like a device that she's trying to get, or she's wait no, what was she doing?
Oh yeah, she's is she like checking, like she's sending out a signal? She's
She's
going.
sending out a signal to someone, I think, yeah. And again, very small detail that she had where when she climbs up the ladder, right before she's about to do it, she hooks her elbow into the ladder like this, and she's able to work. And it's like she's done this so many times where she knows exactly how to hold herself up
And
so
there's
that she can,
some button combination to even get it
yeah,
working. And from the
yeah,
outside, it just looks like a chimney, and it's just like a hidden radio
yeah.
tower. I thought it was really cool.
In the subtitles, I just noticed this. It says rhythmic beeping. So you know that she's sending like a very specific
Oh yeah, it's
signal,
like a
right?
Morse code, right? That
Morse code.
yeah,
That's the
exactly. That's what it was.
and right before she enters it, she speaks to some guy about like entering the place.
She's calling Stellan
Who
Skarsgård, probably, right?
yes, yes. So I'm guessing that's what who she's beeping. But right now we don't know. It's all a mystery. We don't know what's happening, and she's just doing this stuff, right? And we're like, oh, what is she up to now? She's doing something with something,
I actually
and
thought
that's
I had
sort of
missed the point. I was like, in their discussion, I don't remember him saying anything about send out a signal.
the buyer as she mentions him
Yeah,
until he comes.
exactly. Okay.
Like so what I didn't understand any of what was happening within the actual plot in the first episode until third episode. I kind of connected the dots of like, oh, okay, so like I'm guessing Cassian wanted to sell something and he needed her to contact someone so that he could steal this from somewhere and then sell that for money so that he could pay off someone and do this and do that and do this and do that. So he's got all these like 5, 6 different things that have now like connected to each other, where he's like, okay, I gotta steal this and ask her for a favor so that she can get me in touch with someone so that I can sell this, so that I can pay someone, so that I can do this. And his entire life is like turning into like a muddled mess of like this web of lies that he's created for
But again,
himself.
what's great is that you're just following along. It doesn't feel like in a movie where like he has a checklist. It's just like you're going through his day with him.
Yeah,
And this is just what
exactly.
a normal day for him is. These are like the things he has to do. Make
Yeah,
sure he's lying with his homie, set up a deal, make sure that the loan shark guys, like the guys he owes money to, don't fuck him over. Like this is just his normal day.
This isn't stuff that's happening because of the plot, like
Yeah.
because of what happened, or like because oh my god he murdered, so now he has to do all these things.
Yeah, this is just what he
This
would
is
do
this is
anyways.
what he was doing all the while, and
Yeah.
little does he know, even till now he doesn't know that him murdering those cops is actually going to create a problem for
Yeah.
him. He's still trying to just go along doing what he was doing, searching for his sister. And in order to do that, he's done a lot of shady shit that now he has to cover up for, and he has to do all these things. So yeah,
I do have to say, he seems so shady throughout the whole episode that you almost feel like he knows that he's being pursued. Just because he's always like on the move, like he has to.
Right. He kind of figured out that, yeah,
Like
right.
he's always like, because it also starts with him lying with his homie. Like it's just, I I totally don't, like, looking back now, I get it that we're just spending time with him during the day, but it did seem a little bit like, oh, he is in quite he feels urgent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like people keep mentioning, like whenever he talks to someone, like when he talks to his work friend, I think he mentions like, hey, this is getting all the time now.
Yeah.
Right. And then the loan shark says like, hey, I'm not like one of those losers who's going to let you float with all this, and then they forget about it. So that in sentence in itself, when you think about it, it's like enough time has passed with him and other people that he's indebted to that they've actually forgotten about it, that he owes them money.
No,
So like we get like yeah, he's just like, this is a normal day for him, where he just wakes up lying to everyone, and he has to make excuses for not coming into work and all that stuff. Yeah. And he and another thing which is important is that he gets people that are in his life involved in all his lies.
yeah, true.
That's a very important character trait to notice about someone so shady, and someone who's like, he's not like the noble guy who's like, man, I'm not letting you lie for me, I'm not putting your life in danger. He's like, people are like, dude, can I not be involved in this? Like, I don't want to be involved in your life. And he's like, no, man, you got to do me a solid, bro. Come on, bro. And then he goes to his ex-girlfriend, and it's like causing problems. Like that's causing problems with her and her new boyfriend. And he's like, come on, girl, do me one solid, girl. Please contact him. And then, so yeah. So that's a very important thing for to notice. And we actually see how that actually affects other people around him, who are not even connected to him, but are connected to the people to him, and they get into like shit because of that, right?
Yeah.
But we'll get into that later. And so next scene is she's doing that rhythmic beeping, which we assume she's calling somebody, right? And then comes the famous takeout scene, where you see these employees in a Star Wars like
just like
corporate
sex,
office.
blue Chinese or not? I
Blue
don't know the
Chinese
Chinese cheese, blue ramen
Don't be
takeout.
racist, bro.
Blue, but the box looks like Chinese
I know.
takeout.
It's Chinese
But
takeout.
it's like blue ramen is now canon too. We had blue milk, now we got
Blue
blue
milk,
ramen.
no blue, yeah.
They
Right.
love their blue food.
And he's eating with the chopsticks too, so
Yeah, quite the choice.
quite the cultural impact
Like,
Hannah must have made on.
I mean, in a
on Star
galaxy
Wars.
far, far away, a long time
I'm
ago.
sure, yeah, they should have
But they
maybe had some other.
I mean, they had a '60s diner in episode 2.
That's not supposed to. Oh no, he's not eating with chopsticks. My bad. He was eating it with a fork. Okay, my bad.
What a savage!
We could have completely gone like,
But the box is definitely a Chinese
boxes,
takeout
yes.
box.
Oh, and right before that, you see like deputy officer. We need a name for me to not keep calling him because we don't have a name for him.
Which, the bad guy?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure he has a name.
you just call him bad guy.
We'll look it up for next episode.
Yeah. But for now, no, like we just call him bad guy. The deputy officer, bad guy. You see him walking into the thing, and he's got like this strut, right? Like a manager is walking, and then you see this employee, and there's like a bunch of people. It's like you said, like on a NASA space, or like people, like all these people working in front of monitors.
Yeah, like a control
And
center.
they've all got control center. That's the. And he's like eating noodles, and then the girl quickly comes and she's like, "Look alive, he's walking up." So they like, and he like quickly swivels back in his chair, puts the noodles on, and acts like he's working. And it's like a regular office, like I did an internship in hospitality once, and in a hotel, when you would see the hotel manager coming down, everyone would be like, all the waiters would be like, oh my god, he's coming, like quickly, like, and you would start acting like you're pouring water or like said like cleaning plates and shit, you know. And it's almost identical to that, which sort of took me out for a second. But I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I get how realistic everything is supposed to
And
be.
for the
It's
people that
realistic.
pulls them in. Yeah.
For what people are opposing it?
No, I'm saying for other people that don't have a flashback moment where like back in Nam,
Oh, right.
for them it pulls them into the show, you know,
Right.
because they're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, so he says, but we've got an imperial census, and he's like, this is 6 years ago. That's an eternity. There's not a lot about Canary, sir. It's fairly obscure. So, bad guy is sort of asking them about Canary, and which is the place that Andor is from, which is that tiny little area. I assume when they were kids, right? And he's trying to act like so he's saying put out a bounty and put out a word about, is it under jurisdiction? We're simply asking for information. That was the difference. Okay. Oh, so he's asking about another place which is called Ferrix.
That's where they're at. Ferrix.
Right, Ferrix. And
Where
and
Andor
and
is.
this, yeah, and he's like, hey, like can you put out a word at Ferrix, on Ferrix? And the girl, she's like, have you ever been there? And it's almost like she's like sort of emasculating him in a sense, where or like he feels emasculated, the way like, you know, it's almost like, it's like when someone hasn't been to war, but is giving orders to people who have been to war, and they're like, have you ever been to war? Like, you could. And it sort of puts you in the characters of like this, like even as employees, it's all, or the better example would be like a kid who's now in charge of their dad's company, and the older employees are still there, and they're like, dude, you've just joined the company and you're going to order us around, and you see that sort of dynamic, you know, of like the older employees know that this person has not really been in anything, but they still have to answer to him. And this kid who's like in this position of power is trying to act like really like, I'm a manager and I'm your boss. And he's like, no, like, what the hell? And she's like, no, but they have their own way of doing things there. So that's an important piece of information, that, and he automatically just like bursts out. He's like, this is the murder of 2 officers. And everyone just like, everyone in the office, like, whoa. And like, you know, you can see that he felt that sort of questioning take it too hard a little bit, where no one's really, and his aspect of like, no one's really taking this seriously, where shouldn't you guys take it seriously? But everyone else around him is like experienced enough to know that, oh, like, we can't really like, I don't think we should go poking around that place and asking them questions about this sort of like, you know, you sort of just push it under the rug and move on with other things. And he's like, no, but this is the murder of 2 officers, and everyone goes quiet, and people are still like, when he does that, the next scene of the employee eating ramen is sitting like this, and he's looking at bad guy like this, and it's like, oh my god, the employees all still know, like, you know, he's just some guy, like, he's trying to act hard. So that's where I was like, okay, cool, like, it's good that they show that everyone around him also sees that he's like insecure and like, you know, and he's just like really putting on like this front of like, I'm a cool like boss man, and he's like, okay, put out a bulletin for like any canary, that we're looking for a canary or something, right? And he's like, come on, let's go. And everybody's like, oh god, like this guy. And yeah, and we now get to any thoughts on that scene, or I think we covered that, right?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah. Now we get to some guy who's just like walking through this junkyard of spaceships, and he's got like or two of his hogs walking with him, and he's like sort of like looking around, and then you see that he walks up to one of the spaceships, and you see Cassian doing some shit with it, right? And the guy is like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Like, and Cassian's like, "Oh, I forgot something," and yeah, and he's like, "I refueled it just like you told me, and now I'm almost done." And he's like, he's asking them some technical stuff about what is that? What are you like changing chips or whatever? And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just replacing the old one." And you can tell that Cassian is lying to this guy, and yeah, they're sort of having their little thing. Why are you swapping chip logs? I didn't like the way it was running last night, and he's acting like Cassian's acting like he's doing the junkyard manager a favor, and the junkyard manager also sort of he's like, "Oh, like come on, man, like why are you lying to me?"
This is where he steals the device, right?
Right, he's stealing a device from the ship and he's replacing it with
Because
something
once
else.
he tells Stellan Skarsgård his story, I was kind of like, wait, is this a different thing? I was pretty sure that like, so it was just lying to Stellan Skarsgård as well.
Well, I'm not actually sure about that, or maybe he is. I'm not sure if this is the exact. Is this if this is the? That's the thing that I was sort of confused with, and I always get confused with that whenever it comes to sci-fi stuff. Where I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about or what they're actually
I mean,
like.
he's clearly on a junkyard, and he's not acting as an imperial. He's just
Yeah,
scavenging
exactly.
on a junkyard, and there's probably the junkyard owner who's his homie. He's just like,
Oh,
"You're
right,
in
right,
here
right. Yeah,
again
you're right.
illegally," and he's like, "Yo, bro, just let me go this time." And he's like, "Yo, I don't care, just I can go." And he tells him again what to do. He's like, what you need to do is just pack up and leave and go.
Yeah,
Get the fuck
yeah,
out of here. Don't show yourself again. All that shit.
yeah.
And I think with Stan Starscreed later, he's like, I went to an Imperial base and I
Right.
pretended to be one of them. And I walked right in and just grabbed it.
And he
Because,
makes a funny reference to A New Hope, which I'll mention later.
I mean, it's a theme in most of the Star Wars where you
Yeah.
infiltrate a base. And then it's
And
nice
it's the
that
most
they've,
easiest thing in the world.
it's nice that he gives some reason of why the fuck it works.
Exactly. Yeah. So
You know,
we'll get to that in
Yeah.
episode 3. That was a very good moment, right? And I
That's
enjoyed that.
good world building for the Star Wars lore, you
Yes,
know.
yes, yeah. Like there is a reasoning for why something like whereas an audience are like, dude, this is the Imperial thing, and these
Which,
rebels just sort of like
which
just
is
are able
like
to do it.
Rogue One is like the movie for that, where like it took the opening crawl of a movie and they made an entire movie out of it. And it just
Right.
like the whole purpose of it was explaining the most unbelievable part in the movie to make it make sense. Like
Mm,
it's like the essence of Rogue One was like the idea
right.
was that. So it's cool that they're like still at least even if it's just little tiny bits like this that they're
Yeah,
still keeping that, you know, they're
I
adding
agree.
to the lore in retroactively. It's good.
And they do it much better in this than they did in Rogue One.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a couple of things I really liked in Rogue One.
I'm gonna flip you on Rogue One by the end of the series.
I like, for example, I like the moment is like, don't you know a Jedi that's out and hiding? And he's like, he helped me in the Clone Wars, but I will send for him. I was like, especially after I saw Obi-Wan, I was like, oh shit, I know who that is.
Yeah, and there's one very important thing the junkyard manager says, and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna get us into trouble. You're gonna get us both into trouble." And he's like, "Oh, so you're doing me a favor?" And Cassian says, "I'm leaving it better than I did before." And then the junkyard manager is like, "The way you always do, the Cassian way." So it's like everyone, which what I keep,
Yeah.
I've repeated myself about this like 40 times already, but like
Yeah, we get it.
they keep showing that every single person that he comes into contact with is like tired of him, you
Yeah.
know? And they're just like, we're tired of doing you favors. Can you just leave us alone? You're gonna get us both into trouble. And now it's like become like the official casting way that if he comes into contact with you, he's obviously gonna do some shady shit and get you both into some kind of shit. And yeah. And he's like, don't come back. Listen, just please, like, just leave. And also he's while they're talking, I think he can like the junkyard manager can hear like his boss ask him some stuff, and he has to like respond to him on his like thing on his walkie-talkie. I don't know if that happens now or later.
Also, I think that actor is on Ted Lasso.
No,
I think
come
so.
on.
He's like the dad
No,
of
no, no.
somebody on Ted Lasso.
Okay. I thought you said the actor is Ted Lasso.
No.
I was like, no, come on. I was like, please don't. And so yeah, so once he tells him to please just don't come back, we cut back. You see a shot of Andor's face, and he's like, "Mm." And then now we cut back to the flashback, and you see everyone now. They're geared up. They're all the older kids. They're getting their sticks, and they're like getting ready. They're going somewhere. They're going towards the crash of the ship, and you see the little kid sister just watching them from like sitting, and then you see Cass coming from behind and just sort of he's got a stick in his hand and he just sort of runs away. He's trying to catch up with the older kids, right? And his baby sister's like sort of catches up. Like he doesn't even notice her. He just sort of gets out of the tent wherever they were. The sister is like sitting on the steps, and just sort of rushes to catch up with the older kids, right? And then the baby sister catches up to him. And they're speaking Canary, and you
It
can
seemed
see
like
that
she
she's like,
wanted to
"Hey,
come along or something. It felt
either
like
come along or don't leave me." And or
something like that. Yeah.
I'm glad that they didn't have subtitles for all that, because that's exactly what the dialogue would have been. Oh my God, Andor, don't leave me, I'm scared. And oh, don't worry, you just sit back and I gotta go do this, and then I'll be back real quick.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we
Agreed.
get it. We know what's happening. We've seen this beginning of the story of the episode. And so yeah, and then that scene happens where he doesn't even like give her like a nice hug. He just sort of tells her to like, hey, go back. I'm going with these guys.
Well,
And you just
again,
see the
I like that
so,
it's real. You know, he doesn't know that he's
so
never
yeah,
coming back.
yeah. It's like for us, the audience, it's the moment is way more
Like,
impactful
like
because
the look back is like a look of like, yeah,
yeah,
see you later, whatever. You know, like
and he sort
he's
of sighs, and you see the girl like she's not like, oh my God, don't go. She starts crying, like she's just sort of like looking at him, like she's disappointed, but you
but
can see
he's
that
like,
she's a kid who's born in this environment.
and he's like smiling, looking back. If I remember, where
Yeah,
it's like, you know, it's just
yeah,
very normal. It's just when then the camera lingers on his sister and gets wider and wider, you're just like,
yeah.
oh, he's never
He
gonna
doesn't
see
s-
her again.
he doesn't smile. They have like a little moment where so what's important is that they don't even like once she catches up to him,
Yeah, they don't
they don't even
embrace or anything.
they don't even physically touch each other,
Yeah,
like where it's like a little tap on the shoulder or he there kneels down. It's they're sort of like this far apart, and he just sort of like, hey, go back, it's fine. Like he
because
doesn't
again,
leave,
it's
but
just a
it's
Tuesday for them. You know.
exactly. It's just like, hey, like I think what this showed was like, whenever a crash like this happens, like these older kids go, and Cassian has sort of been observing it and has wanted to be a part of it, and now sort of found the moment where he can be a part of it, and he's like the 12-year-old trying to hang out with the 16-year-olds, you know.
Yeah.
And so he's like in a hurry to like catch up to them, like, oh, I don't want to miss their thing. And he sort of looks back. They show the scene of looking back at each other, and he says something to her, which is almost like you can tell, like he's saying, like, hey, don't worry, I'll be right back, you know. And then and you just sort of see him go away, and you just see a shot of the sister just standing there, and the subtitle says somber music playing, which I'm glad I never have subtitles on, because that shit pisses me off so much.
Yeah, I don't know why they randomly do that.
Somber music playing, man. We're like,
Like
okay,
they
like
usually
subtitles.
have two versions where like they have the
Yeah,
audio description and but sometimes
right.
it just bleeds over it. I don't know why.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I guess it's important for like people, if they can't hear, then
Yeah,
they
but like
should
there
know.
should be two options. Like one for
Right.
one thing I wanted to say about the show, I totally forgot. But in the
Mm.
first episode specifically, I was thinking, is this whispering the show? Because everybody fucking whispers, and then in between, I was like, oh, maybe it's a purpose, like it's because of the situation. And but then I was like, no, there's a bunch of times I was like, you don't need to be whispering right now. There's no reason for you to be fucking whispering at this fucking moment.
Yeah.
And then together
I
with
think
the,
it's just like I think they're just trying to maybe. Oh, sorry. Your camera's switching to be stopped off.
but yeah, together with the British accents and the whispering, I had to turn up the volume quite a bit so that I didn't need subtitles
Oh,
because
right.
there were definitely a couple of moments where it's just like, what you say?
What was that? I can't hear you anymore.
Everything is just whispers, and we gotta talk like this. We gotta figure it out.
Let me tell you,
Maybe
we're doing
not.
stuff in secret. Okay? I don't think people.
There's no one around, but we gotta whisper so in
Yes.
case someone is
And,
around. And then somebody
and
walks in, we tell them exactly what we're doing, but we're still whispering.
oh, we didn't see you out there. We were just
Like
whispering.
that was like there's the bad guy is talking to the other guy who comes in to tell him about we gotta go get this dude and we gotta make an example, and the officer needs to be with us. And at first,
Episode.
yeah, but the whole time I'm like, oh, they don't want the rest of the room to know. But then I was like, no, what they're talking about is completely normal. Like you can say this at a normal
That's what I
volume.
thought too. I was like,
Like
oh,
why
okay, so
why are you whispering this? You know?
because that's what I thought too in the beginning, where it's like when they're just talking, whispering to each other, I'm like, oh, he's managed to get another guy on his side, right?
Yep.
The bad guy. And that's why like the other guy is like he's like a proper soldier man, and he only answers to orders, but he poured his heart out for what he truly believes. Like you could see the difference between him being an experienced soldier and knowing that he's doing it for the noble reasons, and the bad guy is doing it because he wants to act like that.
But we'll get
And
to
and
it. We'll get
we'll
to
get
it.
there and then but yeah, you're right. You're fine. That shit is like, I think it was just like maybe for the shows in the like play devil's advocate.
It
Maybe
adds
it's like they were trying to portray that how he's always in some kind of a secret, or where he's always like he can't let other people know, where it's like these 5-6 people who he has to keep speaking to. But yeah,
I mean, I won't deny that it adds to the atmosphere of like everything feels
right.
secret. Everything
Yeah,
is secret.
and everything is shady, and everything is like everything he talks about is like some lie or some scheme that he has to go through,
Yeah.
and he can't let even a neighboring person know what exactly. But then why act like that all the time? Like by now you should have understood that if you act shady, people will think you're talking or doing shady shit. If you just act like how they did
Yeah.
with his work friend,
Yeah,
even though they were
exactly.
whispering, but that felt like, oh, two work friends just meeting, talking to each other, and then
And
they
then he
and then
yells
the work
stuff that
friend, yeah,
makes it clear. And I also think it would have been stronger if it was only Cassian whispering. But the fact that the bad guy is whispering too is like, why is he whispering now? What is he hiding?
what is he at?
You're giving orders to people. Everybody
Right.
in the room knows what the mission is. Why are you in the corner whispering about should I be there with you guys? And the guy's like, yeah, I think
Maybe
it's a
it was an
great
epic
idea.
choice.
It'd be great for morale. You don't need to
Yeah.
be. I think you should be there. It's great for morale. Don't tell those
Don't
guys
tell,
over there.
don't tell anyone though. And then we'll tell them later in a secret
Like,
event.
everybody seems like any second they're gonna be like, "Shh. Are you listening?
I agree.
Do you hear that?
Who's that?
I think they can hear us."
Oh my god.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did want to say that. I forgot.
No one's-
But yeah, so we're leaving
Oh.
the girl behind. She's standing there. And we're like,
and
peace.
that was a very, very good looking shot.
Yeah, great. It immediately
of
tells
the-
you that like you're never gonna see that girl again.
But also not just that, just like the way the jungle looked around it, it was like so vivid, right? That's what I was like. I was so happy that everything looks like sort of like beautiful but depressing at the same time, where it's not like just a murky color palette.
It was almost like the
But-
forest was like swallowing her up. You know.
But all the leaves were like dark green, and you could see like little smoke, and you could see other kids in the distance like looking here and there, and it's not like just this one girl, and like that whole shot of it looked like I don't know anything about the technical aspects of cinematography. You would be able to notice much more, but just as like a regular viewer, like those kind of scenes like stand out to me, or those kind of shots.
It almost felt to me like that's probably not how it looked in actual real life, but that's how Andor Cassian remembers that moment. You know, it's the last
Yeah.
look of her, and it's like that freeze frame
Right.
of like after he's looking, he's just picturing her just standing there looking
Right.
at him disappearing in the distance. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and that's the end of that episode. The episode just completely like that's
Finally.
And but there was one very important thing that I forgot to mention that they mentioned. The commanding officer, the fat cat officer, when he's in the office telling bad guy officer about he says that there are reports of a human-looking person with dark features. And they mentioned dark features at least 2 more times later on in episode 2. And I made a note of that and I said, dark features, please God, please don't bring human racism into the Star Wars world. Not because it's not a good thing to talk about, but because, like we discussed earlier, it opens up to so many more questions that you can have with what racism should be.
True.
Like, you can't make it that obvious where it's like 2 white guys and Cassian, and there's black people.
Yeah.
So
Asian
Cassian
people.
is Hispanic, and there's aliens, and there's
At
different
first-
weird-looking creatures.
At first, when he said, I think he says specifically a dark character.
And he says dark. No, he says human-looking character with dark features. Let me get you the exact
You're
wording
talking
of
when he's
that.
talking about who shot the 2 officers, right?
Yes, because right
Okay.
now we don't have an image of Cassian.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing to go off
Because,
of.
like, yeah, at first,
yeah.
what my initial reaction was that I thought they were calling him dark, but then I thought I heard it in a way that, like, oh, he's like a dark, mysterious guy. But then later, when they bring it back, I was like, oh no, I think they're trying to say
So yeah,
'cause he's dark.
yes. The first time I was like, I hope they don't are not talking about that. But then in episode 2, they mentioned it twice, dark features, and I went back and wrote this because we saw all 3 episodes in one go. So there were things that I actually went back to episode 1's notes, and I was like, please don't make this a thing. And yeah, so I thought that, oh, there we go. A human with dark features asking about a canary girl.
Well, now the question is, how many colored people are in the Empire?
There we go. And that's my problem of, like, there's so many colored people in the Empire.
I can think of one right now, which is Finn, who deserted.
Oh, no, dude, there was a guy right there. The first guy the bad guy raids, who he's like, well, let me know if it's too much for you, because then I'll give it to someone who appreciates it.
Oh yeah, true.
That's
also,
a black guy.
Yeah, also in the when he's giving the speech, the guy doing this, he's like,
Yeah, there's a bunch of black people in there.
True. Yeah, I don't know.
So
it was definitely, like, I hope they explore it more what that means. A dark feature, like, because yeah, like, he's also not that dark.
Even that. He's not even dark at all. He's darker than and that's why I was like,
barely. He's like,
barely. He's basically, like, to us, he's a white guy, right? For
Basically.
Indian people, like,
Basically.
Diego Luna, if he came in for hey, I'm from Spain or wherever he's from, I was like, oh, that's a white guy.
yeah, pretty much.
So I was like, I wrote that. I was like, please don't bring, especially just the aspect of bringing human racism into Star Wars opens them up. Like, if they do it in a way where they explain this situation well, that also will still open up Star Wars to so many more questions that you don't really need to open it up to, like how you mentioned earlier with something else about, like,
Yeah.
why open yourself up to so many questions when you just don't have to mention them.
I mean, they're doing some ballsy shit where they're like creating new planets and races, and like I think it's the first time we actually see tribal people on that level.
Yeah.
You know, and
Right.
like they're adding like new things to the lore, which like it's not everybody does, and not everybody does well. So I give them credit for at least doing something out of the box and something fresh. But I agree,
that's
like
the thing,
they should
this
explain
to me,
this more.
this to me actually feels way less out of the box and way more tacked on, almost in a terms of, like, where it's like in She-Hulk, they keep mentioning and hammering you over the head. Obviously, they don't do that in this, but like with the women are better than men, right? They're trying to bring on a contemporary social issue into something like this, where it's like, okay, you can sort of talk about that stuff, but in Star Wars, talk about dark features.
Yeah.
It's by white people who are in charge and who are in the government. It feels very, very, very on the nose of, like, we need to and this is how white people they're all they're all racist. They all look at anyone who's not white as a dark featured person.
They should have called
I was
him
like, please don't even talk about that.
I mean, depending on the
Just a
context,
human guy looking for a canary girl. That's it.
But
That's all you need to say.
But if they wanted to make a point out of it, in context, it can sound terrible. But in this, they could have made it more about that he's tribal, he was a savage or something, like he's like that he is from that
But
canary.
it doesn't even look like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know.
He just says like no one even knew that much about canary, which is why the bad guy officer is asking his employees about canary and ferrex and this and that. So the fact that he's asking about a canary girl is what leads to them. That's what, like, in episodes second or third, where the older lady is like, how did they get to know the word canary?
Yeah,
is because Cassian actually asks the lady of the night, I'm looking for a canary girl. And you see that lady of the night later on telling someone about it. I noticed that. I don't know if that's in episode 1 or not. It's a very, very short scene.
Yeah.
But it's in one of the things where you see her with someone.
I think it's when the corporals come in and they ask about it.
Yes.
And they're like, you've seen this man.
Exactly. So it's the canary part which is what actually gets him identified to the corporals.
Which is a cool idea.
Yeah, which is very good, but it had nothing to do with the dog, which is why I'm like, you don't need to even include, you can just say human with a mustache or a human with a hood or something. But
Devil's advocate is that they wanted to point out that, I think, like you're saying, it's the canary thing that ticked them off. But I guess, they could have done it differently.
They don't need, like I will give them credit where maybe they because they mention it again 2-3 times, and so I hope they maybe do something with it in the later episodes.
But if it's dark featured,
dark features, it says in the thing, like, and I wrote that down. I went back, and even in episode 2, they say dark features twice. So I'm like, are they? No, please don't do this. And he says, a human with dark features asking about a canary girl who might have been working in the establishment. That's the sentence the fat cat commanding officer has for him. And I was just like, you don't, because in that, especially in that moment, before you even get to other stuff, you as an audience member are just like, really, dude, you're gonna like this? Are these going to be the characters where it's the fat white guy with the mustache? It was the commanding officer and the soldier-looking white guy, and they're talking about anyone who's not white as a guy with dark features. He's not a black guy, but he's got dark features. I was like, just leave that out. It's a crime spy thriller. Keep it to that. Go, Lord of the Flies in space.
Yeah, let's just hope they do more with it. If they make it such a
or they just forget about it, just completely forget about it.
I mean, now that they've made it a point, ideally they make it a better point.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope they don't go with it where I hope they're gonna go, where I don't hope they're gonna go with it, which is just a commentary on racism in the real world, where white people in positions of power just look at anyone who's not white as someone with dark features.
Not needed in Star Wars.
Not just that it's not needed.
It's
and not just that. Like, you can do stuff with it, but then you have to, like, you can't just mention it and then forget about it. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Star Wars up to
that's what I'm saying. Like, now that they've made a point out of it, like, do something with it.
Yeah, but they better do.
No, I was just gonna say, I think this is a good point to end the episode.
Yeah. My point was, let me just quickly, what I was going to say was that because of I'm giving the writings more credit, which is why I feel like this one line and them dealing with an issue like this just seems like it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it felt out of place. But
that was the recap of episode 1. Any final thoughts for the episode?
No, man. I think I think we've discussed all the thoughts that we had with the episode and how I think we feel about it, and how we feel about Star Wars and all that stuff. So
yeah, I agree.
I think everybody knows.
And last thing I say is nice. It felt like a nice like a nice movie. Each episode was like its own little chapter of a movie. I felt like with a nice big climax in episode 3. And it was a great start. But I would say we should do episode 2 tomorrow or next time. Otherwise, we will be here too long.
Oh
For
yeah.
breakdowns like this, I think it's better to do episode by episode. Otherwise, it's too much, which I think is fine too. It's not an
Wait, what do you
animation.
mean? What did you say? Episode by episode? Is that what you said?
Yeah. If you're going into
Yeah.
so much detail per episode, you know what I mean.
Right.
Also, gives people time to watch it in their own pace, and we don't always get 3 episode drops immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh yeah, dude. If it's one episode at a week, then obviously like this would be the point.
yeah. I mean, we
So I'm
still
glad
did.
that we're going into so much detail.
We still
'Cause-
did 3.5 hours if you cut out the middle break. 3.5 hours on
Yeah.
one episode.
And also we have to take into account that we did go on about like at least an hour, I would say, about all the previous stuff, Star Wars, Rogue One,
Yeah,
all
but
that stuff. So
2.5 hours on 40
2.5
minutes
hours
is
on
pretty
one
good.
episode.
It's pretty
So
good.
I think that's
But I think it's good. I think people will enjoy this for people who want to go into in depth. A lot of people just give you general thoughts. I think it's a good idea to go like scene by scene properly into
Yeah.
it. Give each scene like a moment to think about like what did it mean to us and stuff.
And also like with the way we're going scene by scene is like we're mentioning like small little moments that are very important to the story and the characters as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're sort of skipping through the stuff, so we're not like being boring in terms of like just going scene by scene, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we're finding new bits in the scene that like
Yeah.
could be important and exploring the different meanings of each scene, and hopefully also catching what other people had caught in those things or things that they haven't caught, and we can catch
Yeah.
them up. Like clear up the story further, let them understand the story a bit better. Because depending on how you watch it, yeah, of course, there's a lot of things that can fly past you. So I think for that, it's a good reliving of the episode while also
And-
discussing, exploring, and critiquing it.
Yeah. Basically just talking in depth about what we just watched.
Yeah,
And
and
that's all it is.
yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think we should do episode 2 next time. So
Okay.
tune in next time.
Tune in next time.
And
Please tune in.
yeah, like, subscribe, comment, do all the things.
Ring the bell.
Do whatever you
And
can.
with ring the bell as DJ Hammer. What was the name?
Yes, before you ring the bell, before you hit the button, do a
Yeah. You got-
I like that there's 2 of them too. It's like he's like this, and
He's got a different ritual for the morning and the night.
was it? I thought it was the same.
think so. I think so.
It started with that one, and then
It starts with this, but then he's got like a.
I like it. I
He
love
takes
that
his
guy.
job very seriously, you know.
He also looked a little bit like literally just Quincy. Forgot
Quincy
his name.
Jones.
No, another actor. I can't believe I forgot his. I love this guy, but yeah, I'll remember it by the time we talk about him, because he
Quincy
totally
Tarantino.
no, but he totally looked like that actor. I don't think enough.
Right.
Find out next time when we review
Find out next time.
episode 2.
Yeah.
Gotta leave him with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
All right.
peace, everybody.
Peace. Take care.